West Coast Avengers. West Coast Avengers. Hello, everybody. It's time for the show. What show is that? It's SunDAVE Sitdown. Hey, everybody. It's a Happy New Year. It's 2023. I mean, I don't know if it's an actual Happy New Year yet. It's only 18 and a half hours into the first day of the first month in 2023. But here we are, sitting down. I hope you're sitting. I'm sitting. And it's SunDAVE. I'm Dave, your host on this show. Hello there. Anti-Hero Comics Avery. Hello there. In my best Obi-Wan Kenobi. Actually, that's a horrible Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hello there. I think that's better Obi-Wan Kenobi. Which is funny because, like, you know, Alec Guinness, great British actor, you know, and Ewan McGregor, the great Scottish actor, but they played the same person. Hello there. You know what? You're terrible. Get out of here. Well, it has been a giant-sized New Year for me. I am the goat hunter. I hunt goats all the time. Oh, you mean greatest of all time? Look, I'm not about to call myself the greatest of all time, but I'm the best in this YouTube channel on this show. How about that? All right. Well, if you've been following along, then there's no secret. You know what happened this week, but we might as well talk about it. I can't afford you to leave right now. There's only one other person. Listen, there's 5 people in here. I'll kick you out if I need to. So, just in case you have not been watching, I did drop a new video today. I think I'm going to go back to Sunday drops because I don't like Monday, but we'll see. Thursday, I brought home 3 boxes of comics. I don't know, it was about 700 comics or so, maybe 800. And I unboxed them live right here on YouTube on Thursday evening. And I pulled out some amazing books. Among them was the entire Chris Claremont X-Men run, with the exception of X-Men 101, the Dr. Doom Marvel Superheroes number 20, Batman 251, the first appearance of Ra's al Ghul, the first Lazarus Pit, I forget the numbers, Luke Cage number 1. But the moment that I as much as we were talking about it, and I mean us, you know, me in the chat, and I think Avery might have been the one. Well, he kept talking about 181, and people were saying GSX. And anyway, there was the moment that I hit the giant size X-Men. Absolutely wild. Like, as much as I thought it could happen, I wasn't expecting it. It's like, you know, you never think the things that you're willing into the universe are going to come true. And well, let's just go. Let's watch the moment. Trevor, what's going on? Thank you very much. Not nearly as big as the score as I grabbed the first Sin City Comics and the first Simon Best Green Lantern for $2 a piece today. You're right. That is a bigger haul. Chuck, Happy New Year to you. Actually, there's something funny, Chuck. I was thinking about Sin City before I started the stream, and it's probably because we were talking about it, but one mention of Sin City right there. And then Chuck asked me for a movie recommendation this weekend, and I said, if you've never seen Sin City, no better time than now. And he loved it. All right, let's watch the moment. Hide your kids if they're around. Maybe, you know, if they don't want to hear the word fuck or whatever. Let's watch. Defenders number 1. All right, we're getting close to that GSX if it's in here. Star Slayer number 1 or 7. Man Bat. Holy shit! Holy fucking shit! Ah! Ah! Well, it's it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I'm gonna win the lottery or something like that, and you do. I've never won the lottery, but I felt like I won the lottery with that collection. That was incredible. The feeling about that. Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, I thought 180 and 181 were coming. It danced around. I got 183 and like 185, but who knows? There is more comics in the future with this guy, so we'll see what happens. All right, the Luca celebration dance, Luca Doncic, or however you say his name. Yeah, that felt good. It felt good. I felt weird, like I was trying to hide that I was shaking. One thing I noticed by uh, watching that video, watching your sales, is just how much you freaking know about all the comics, and Cincinnati was awesome. Well, thank you. I don't know about, I know well, and that's the gist of this show. Like, I'm going to talk about my origins in collecting and how I kind of got started, and we'll go way back. And then I want anybody who's got any questions, please feel free. This is going to be as much as knowledge I can provide tonight. Please feel free to ask questions. Uh, we talked about that already. Sometimes I feel the well is dry in respects to comics, but you give me hope. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's 24/7, 365 days a year for me. I wake up and I check, places that, websites that have stuff for sale, Craigslist and Facebook and OfferUp. And I just put myself out there. But it is full-time treasure hunting. I wish I was as cool as Nick Cage in National Treasure, but I'm not. I'm like Nick Box instead of Cage. Yes, I did get a Turok one, and you should too. It is very okay. So that's kind of funny because I the Pacific Northwest is rich in comics, um, in a double way. So it is rich in comics history in that, and current comics production. Everybody but Marvel and DC is based out of here. Fantagraphics is Seattle. Portland has Image, Dark Horse, I believe Boom and Oni, and a couple of others. They're all, the offices are all in the Pacific Northwest. I've only been living here since 2014. I'm originally from New York, and when I moved out here, I realized that Seattle's different these days because Seattle's gone through the same thing that San Francisco's gone through, and it's lost a lot of its original culture and its indie sensibility because it's just overpriced and full of techies. But um, Portland and the surrounding areas of Seattle and Seattle, Tacoma, just have a rich history of comic stores. McFarlane used to own a comic store with his brother close to where I live. I want to say like 15 miles. And, the ups and downs of the comic industry has caused stores to close, obviously. I mean, we all have felt that if you're 40 years old or, in that, area, then back in the 80s and 90s, we were at the height of having comic book stores in every fucking town. Long Island had comic stores in every town. I lived in a town called Deer Park. My local store was called World of Fantasy, and just a mile and a half down the road, there was Captain Cronies, and like another like couple of miles down the road, there was another store. And so I was fortunate enough to grow up in a place that had multiple local comic stores for me, and it was no joke. And like Florida, when I used to visit my grandma down in Boca, it was like a baseball card store in every town, and they also had comics because card and comic stores were the thing. So the Pacific Northwest, like I said, is loaded with comics. It's loaded with comic stores, and since comic stores more existed back in the day, there's more collections to be found. Plus, Tacoma is about 15 miles from the Joint Military Base Lewis McChord, and so that's why I find a lot of Mark Jewelers. I didn't gloss over the first Alpha Flight. I had the first cameo, and you're right. Maybe I missed the first appearance, but I remember pointing out the cameo. Chuck said that Bendis lives in Portland. Bendis, Fraction, Kelly Sue DeConnick. Yeah, there a lot of writers and creators um, live in Portland. I don't think any of the Image guys do. Maybe Larson does, but you Todd lives in Phoenix. Silvestri's LA. I'm not sure where Valentino lives. I'm not sure about Will's Portacio, and then Liefeld lives in Anaheim area. Uh, but yes, very, very comics rich city. Greg Rucka lives there. And we'll get to that because I lived in Portland for 9 months when I worked in the comic industry. We're going to go over some scars, you know? There's going to be some scars talked about. Definitely some trauma. Rich in multiple ways. The Bay Area is a big hub in Cali. Yeah, SoCal and the Bay Area. It's, well, first off, you've got San Diego. There's a lot of shops in San Diego and a lot of comics in San Diego. LA obviously is, it's LA, so there's going to be, it's the entertainment industry. But me and Avery have both talked about the fact that LA is actually horrible for comic hunting because it's a memorabilia saturated area and people are keen to that. And then the Bay Area is a joke, and I mean it in the best way possible. You can spit and find comics like anywhere you look, there's comics in the Bay Area, at least in my travels. And, I go down there often because Dave Venture, Dave Correa, is a Bay Area native. And we go comic hunting there all the time. So great stores there. Escapist Comics and Bronze Age Batcave are two of the best, but there's tons. Jason, yes. Portland is okay. So Portlandia, and if you're not familiar with the show, it was a show that ran on IFC with Fred Armisen and Carrie Brownstein. A very funny show about the quirkiness of Portland, and it's embellished a little bit, but that's really Portland. There's kitschy shops, there's kitschy food, everything's really cute. It's a small town, Jason, you live in New York, so even comparatively to Queens, Portland is a big town or a very small city, but it feels nice and it's a very lovely place. I couldn't recommend it enough. There's a lot to eat, a lot to smoke, and a lot of comics, and it is a true nerd city. I can't emphasize that enough. The nerdiness of Portland is a real thing. But just to give you a little insight into what it's like living there, the first month I lived in Portland, 2 separate occasions, I saw somebody walking down the street juggling in my neighborhood. So when you think about Portlandia, that kind of checks out. Indiana, Wexler. All I need is a bullwhip. It belongs in a museum. Bagley lives around Atlanta. Oh, I didn't know that. He pops into a store, frequent signings a lot. Usually for free. It's really funny, Trevor, because on the other end of the spectrum, Randy Emberlin lives in my area. And Randy Emberlin is at every show. He goes into shops, he signs books everywhere, and he's Bagley's guy. So that's kind of funny. 2 opposite ends of the country with 2 guys that are notorious of working with each other. LA is a joke for comics. Yeah. Midwest road trip would be fun. I don't know if I would go as far as Chicago, but I would hit, maybe Indianapolis or I've been to oh shit, what's the name of the town? Omaha. I've been to Omaha. Omaha, like that area in Nebraska and the surrounding states, have a lot of antique balls. And I found some good comics out there. I remember North Carolina. I'm going to be going back there this year because my brother lives there, and I think I'm going to go to Heroes Con. So that's a fun place to dig for comics. Not so much Charlotte, but just the antique malls in Carolina are really good, and the garage sales are good. Tons of flea markets out here, and yep. And the key is to get there early and look for the storage locker guys. Yeah. Speaking of, that's pretty sure. I mean, I bought. Well, okay, so that's a good segue to this. I want to show you guys another clip. So most of you people follow me on Instagram, and if you don't, then you didn't see the reel I posted. But what I thought was amazing about this find with the GSX this week was the fact that January 22nd, the day that I bought my car, the first car I've owned since I moved out of New York, because once you live in New York City, and then you go to Seattle. You don't need a car. Uh, I bought a box of comics from somebody that buys storage lockers, and uh, and so I was unboxing it live on Instagram, and this happened. And a lot of you know about this, but this was the pull. It kind of started the year off, and the GSX book ended the year. But here,
Frontier, Plop, number 3, Weird Wonder Tales 2. Oh! Holy shit! What?
yeah.
Oh!
So
Holy fucking shit! Oh my fuck!
and that's my favorite line I've ever uttered. Oh my fuck! So that was the Amazing Spider-Man 129 that I pulled out of that carton of about 300 comics, which I bought for $100. Which it was the only Spider-Man book in there, and I, I was I lost my mind. I had no clue what was going to be in there. I pulled out a Luke Cage run. I pulled out some big books, but that was something else. And that book came back a 9.2. So that, I've had people be like, oh, why have a nice spine roll on that book? Or what do you mean it's a 9.2? Like, fuck off. Anyway, so the storage locker people are great. Santa Cruz flea market was a great one, closed down. I've never been to the Santa Cruz flea market. I've been to Santa Cruz, but I don't know if Dave has either. And yes, Chuck agrees with me. Portland is very much like the show, and it's it's great. It's great. Portland's one of those towns you can walk around and find something weird and something fun and something good to eat. Chuck, I know you posted something on Instagram today about going to look for coffee, and I was like, oh, I wonder where he went. I sure Midwest is fun. I get what you're saying, Avery. What do you mean, you people? I'm the dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. Hey, Flush Jackson's in the house. So, PDX, baby. That's right. Jason, so in 20, no, it was 2014. So I moved in 2014. I spent 10 years on a bender, and in 2014 I got sober, and the clarity that comes with sobriety, or at least for me, I know people do go through a lot of moments of clarity when they get sober, but the clarity that comes with sobriety for me was like, all right, I think I'm done with New York. Like, I've lived here my whole life. I grew up here, and that's it. And I visited Seattle a bunch. I dated somebody that lived in Seattle, which we weren't dating when I moved here, but yeah, I just really fell in love with it here in the bunch of times that I spent here. And because at that time I worked, oh, thanks, Eve. At that time I worked remotely, which now I work for myself. But when I worked in events, I was able to just pick wherever I wanted to live, and I'd travel for work. So it was a great move. I am never going back to the East Coast. I absolutely love the Pacific Northwest. It's everything I love about this, topographically. And now that I live in a parent comic vortex, I'm definitely never leaving. So, so, well, that's okay, Flush. It's a great place to be from, but I can understand if you don't want to live here anymore, because I moved from some people, people come from all around the world to go to New York to make it, and live in New York, and I'm the opposite. So Mexican fruit, no. Mexican fruit would have brought me to the West south of here, but there's not a lot of Mexican food in Northwest. We're very rich in Asian food, Thai and Chinese and Japanese, but it's more about the freshness of the food here. It's one of the most sustainable places in the country for food, and obviously for water. Yeah, exactly, Avery. But the best burritos can be found in the Mission District. All right, so I just that is a main food group here. That is correct. That is the main food group. I lived in the Bay Area for 12 years, Austin. But you lived in two of the best places for Mexican, Tex-Mex, Mexican or barbecue. So Flush is in Oregon. He's actually, no, he's in Washington now. He's over the river. My collecting goals for 2023. Well, okay, so as a collector for comics, my main goal still is to get every single piece of published art of Todd McFarlane's. But I added something onto that where I'm now trying to get every single one of his Marvel books in Mark Jeweler variants, and I'm pretty close to completing that already. Um, but I still want to get like a Spider-Man 1 Platinum. You know, there's stuff that I want to get, but I need to me, it's about getting every single different piece of published art. Variants aren't so important to me. Variants aren't so important to me. Yeah. And Jason is one of the people that I've been sharing a lot of this stuff with. Mainly, I've dipped my toe into original art, and you know, I don't have any goals for it yet because you know I can't set lofty goals like getting a McFarlane page or something. That's just money that I don't have. But um, and then another big collecting goal of mine. So this year was like I started with that Amazing Spider-Man 129, and I said it. I'm going to put it out to the universe, and I thought it might happen this year, and then came close. But overall, like my pinnacle is to buy a collection like I did the other day, or go to a garage sale or an estate sale or whatever, and find an Amazing Fantasy 15, whether it be $1, whether it be $100. But that's my goal overall. Like Hulk 181 is the book I want the most to find that way. But the goal to if I was calling myself like a gold medal treasure hunter, it would be finding an AF 15. So that's the goal in the treasure hunting. But the collecting goal is just to build the McFarlane stuff to the point where I've got everything. I've got my Surfer keys, I got my Galactus keys, I got all that stuff. Like it's more about the hunt. So and then my goals for the show are a lot loftier than my collecting. I want to grow this specific program. I want, my goal is let's say by the end of 2023, 75 people on average every SunDAVE. And then my other goal is to get certain people on the program: Todd Sankiewicz, Ryan Otley, Liefeld, Jim Rugg, Ed Pisker. I want to get some more people on the channel. I want to speak to them. So that was the long answer. Yes, original art is so personal, but there is a lot out there, but each one is a one of one. Are there any books that I've sold that I regret later on? Yes. Most recently, and it's this year, I sold my buddy Spidey with Kicks, Jay, my Wizard #1 newsstand, which at the time I was like, oh, I got a nice Wizard #1. It's in great condition. I got this newsstand in a collection that, I just didn't need another one. But the regret's very small. Up until this year, and I'll be honest, up until this year, I sold almost my entire collection, save one short box. And it was because multiple reasons. I used to have problems with collecting too much and feeling like I had too much stuff, and that I was trying to be not a minimalist, but because I moved around a bunch, I was like, oh, I don't want to own this, that, and the other thing. And I moved from New York to Seattle, Seattle to Portland, Portland back to Seattle. So, and then Seattle to Tacoma. So up until this year, I was like, oh, I sold my Saga run. I sold a bunch of full runs I had, but now I got most of that stuff back in collection. So, now I know that you can get stuff back. And then it's funny, I don't regret, and I didn't sell it. But I did give my first Spider-Man 1 that I got signed by Todd to my friend Gianluca, who lives in Italy. It was a kind of a gift because he came over to Seattle, and I was like, I want to give you this because you came all the way over. So anyway, but mostly no. I try not to feel regret about physical things. I try not to harp on regret too much in general anymore. It's something that took me a long time to get there. Brian, yes. So that weekend I was in San Francisco, staying at my buddy's house, and we got word that that AF-15 got purchased in Castro Valley, and I don't know if the garage sale had comics in the listing, but like it's something I should have been at if it did. I would have been at had I looked. But we were doing flea markets that weekend. But that's the thing that showed up at a garage sale. The guy bought that box for like $20 or something like that, and ended up selling it to A1. Or I don't know the full story. I just know when it happened. I heard about it that day. Or the next day. It was our friend's kid that our friend's son that works at Matt Ritchie's son works at what's the name of it, that comic book store. Anyway, I can't remember anything right now apparently. Yes, I know, Flush. Well, look, could always sell them to Papa Dave. Wait, I don't want to buy back those comics. It's Spidey. I get it. And you do have to find your limits on collecting. And that's something we can go into in depth in a little bit. Finding the things that you want to collect and just sticking with that, and not, and Flush and me talk all the time. I don't think he really suffers from FOMO buying. I think he just buys stuff that he might not want at a later date. But that's, there's a lot of that stuff I own, and I always think to myself, like, hey, I can always sell it if I don't want it. I know not everybody's got the avenue to sell, but there's options. There's many options, but we can go into that too. So I told everybody here already, but I am from New York. I grew up on Long Island, and I grew up in a place where comic book stores were everywhere. And I know not everybody has that. When I started collecting in the late 80s, early 90s, and I started reading comics, I could go to a comic book store within like a 10-minute drive in any direction of my house, any direction from my house. And it's, I want to show you guys, I want to share, if you didn't see this picture, I'm going to share you this picture in a second, but we suffer from buying too many of the same books, hoping to get the higher grade. Yeah, I know, Jay. And it's, you really have to think about, does grade mean the most to you, or owning those books that you really want mean the most to you? And I think I've come to a really good place in my life now that I'm doing this, but now that I'm getting more books, I mean, like, am I ever going to own a Fantastic Four 48 and a 98? No. Do I want to? Absolutely not. Do I want to own a $35,000 comic? No. What good is that going to do for me when I could sell that book, get the money, buy a lesser, of a grade copy, and then have the cash to do whatever I want with it? So I know that's jumping the gun on it. I'm just saying. So let's take a look at this photo. Showing you a photo that I took, or my brother took, or my dad took, of the Polaroid camera of me holding my first copy of Spider-Man #1. Let's see, get that under the camera here. Oh, there we go. So the Polaroid is right side up, but my dad took it upside down, and the comic is right side up. So wait, maybe it'd be better if I show it here. There you go. I've been a McFarlane fan since I was a little kid. Obviously, this is probably like 10 or 11 years old or something like that. And I used to be a regular at a store called World of Fantasy in Deer Park, and Tom was the owner, and we'd hang out there. And I don't remember my first comic, but I can show you the book that means the most to me right here. I think you guys probably understand how much this book means to me. It's oh wait, no, that's not the right book. Oh, Misa coloring fun. Oh, all right, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. One of the books that means the most to me, and I don't think I talk about it as much, is Wolverine #1. It came out in 89 or 88. I probably got it around, a year or two after it, or a year after it came out, probably when I was 9 or 10. And I had never seen a Wolverine comic before. I had never seen the Frank Miller series, and man, this thing blew my goddamn mind. Because I was used to seeing Wolverine in the costume, and I know some people might have been disappointed that you get Patch Wolverine, like as a kid, you get your first Wolverine books are Patch Wolverine, and it's this older style art. It's John Buscema, but this page, look at this page. This page, I don't know. Maybe not everybody felt that, but he looked insane. And so this was like this is the first comic I could remember wanting. The first comic that I could remember being like, oh my God, I got a copy. And probably the first comic that I remember like having, being scared that if I read it, it would damage it. Because like I grew up in a house of collectors. My dad collected comics and cards when he was a kid. My brother collected comics and cards. And so of course I grew up collecting comics, cards, and Star Wars toys and stuff. And so yeah, this is the first comic I can remember just falling in love with and seeing the John Byrne on the back, and collecting this. So I probably got this pretty soon after it came out. Now that I think about it, because I think I started collecting Wolverine at issue 12. And it's funny because back in the 80s, in the early 90s, this book was not as hard to get or as expensive as Wolverine 10. And Wolverine 10 is the famous Sabretooth cover, Bill Sienkiewicz, Sienkiewicz, Bill Sienkiewicz, Sienkiewicz, Sienkiewicz. And so it's weird. And now the shift in this is now number 8 is the expensive book. Number 1 kind of had its moment again. And number 10, like it's a $20 book now, where it used to be like a $60 book. But I took to comics really quick. And Wolverine was my, and I think I speak for most. Jim, oh, it's good to see you. I hope you saw the clip and got to watch and saw what happened this week. If not, please do, and we'll talk about it. I emailed you today, by the way. So I could probably speak for most males in the 38 to 43, maybe 45 range that as a young kid growing up in the 80s, like when you talk about your favorite, everybody wanted to be Wolverine. All my friends, we all wanted it. We loved Wolverine. He was the angry young male in us wanting to and I was bullied a lot. So it was always someone that, like I turned to this as like my outlet for my anger about, getting bullied and picked on and stuff. Hey, what's up, Trent? So my first love lies with Wolverine. My first, favorite comic to buy monthly was Wolverine, and you couldn't stop me from buying anything I could find Wolverine. And at this time, this is Wolverine's rise to being the most popular superhero of his time. He trumped Batman, he trumped Spider-Man at the time. Anything you could get your hands on Wolverine, I was trying to buy. Marvel Comics presents X-Men books, toys, T-shirts. I have photos in a photo album somewhere of me wearing like the white Jim Lee Wolverine X-Men shirt. But that's just a little bit like when I was collecting as a kid. And I won't harp on the whole comic exploitation of comics and the kids my age back then, because it's been said and said again. But I bought all that shit. The holograms, the prisms, the death of Superman. But I got to thank my parents, too, because my parents never discouraged me from reading comics. As I said, my dad read comics as a kid, and, his mom threw them all out, and he had probably some really expensive books. And he kept his classic comics, which were worth a bunch at a time, but they don't hold the value they used to. But in let's see what year this is. I got to get the year. I think it's like 93. Oh, 1990, my parents went and did like a 2.5-week trip to like Norway, Denmark. I don't know if they went to Sweden, but they were over there. And they brought this back for me. And I thought that was super sweet. And like the collector in me is glad that like all the comics that I've sold in my life, This never came close to being sold. This is a Danish detective comics. This is the cover for either 500 or 600, but I don't think that's what's in this book. But they brought this back for me, and obviously I couldn't read it. Can't read Danish, but it's probably the beginning of my love for Batman comics. We went to go see, and I'm sure a lot of you had that same experience in '89. Went to go see Tim Burton's Batman, and obviously I knew Batman. I used to watch the Burt Ward and Adam West show because it was on fucking every channel, all day, every day. It was on like twice a day. So I loved Batman, but I don't think I had really read too many Batman comics as a young kid, and then at 9 or 10 years old, however old I was, because I have a late birthday. So if somebody, if you're talking about August of 1990, I'm still 10 years old. Yeah. Okay. But this is probably what set me on the path to really, really absolutely falling in love with Batman comics. And, I still stand by the fact that Batman's the greatest literary character and fictional character in modern history in the last century. Maybe just being edged out by Sherlock Holmes. But at this point, there's more Batman in the pop culture in every way, shape, or form than there ever will be for Sherlock. All right. I couldn't read. No, I was funny. I once convinced one of my old friends when we were in college, or after high school. We were at Barnes and Noble, and I convinced him I couldn't read. I'm like, dude, I graduated with you. You've known me my whole life. You know I can read. Anyway, so yeah, this is just something that oh, there it is right there. This is just something that I've kept with me this entire time. It means a lot to me. I told my mom earlier last year, I was like, do you remember that book? And I sent her a picture. She's like, oh, I didn't know you still had that. And it's like, yeah, yep, never going anywhere. So a Danish Batman comic that my parents brought me back from their trip in 1990. Let's get it. Sherlock is public domain at this point. That does not surprise me, but that kind of surprises me. I guess I have to eat my words. That surprises me. That's pretty cool, though. That is pretty cool. What's up, Sean, by the way? As of today, right? Yes, I know how to read today, if that's what we're talking about. So I collected, I amassed a lot. We used to trade comics. I used to sell comics at school. I was always doing stuff like that. There was never a point in my life where I wasn't hustling, wasn't selling, etc. So I had a lot of local shops, but World of Fantasy was my main shop until I was probably like 12. I found this comic shop in a town called Mineola, New York. My mom brought me there, and Grasshopper Comics is the name of that store. And let me just say, out of all the stores that I went to as a young kid, as an early teen, as a late teen, Grasshopper Comics is the only one that's still open on Long Island. Fourth World is one of those stores that is pretty well known out east, and that's Scott Snyder's local store, and he goes there all the time and does signings and stuff like that. But Grasshopper Comics became one of my frequent stores. It was a little bit further from my home, so I usually went there once a month. But it's really funny. What the hell's the name of that company? Chromium? Okay. Does anybody remember the comic in the 90s called Chromium Man? Triumphant Comics, I think, was the publisher. John Riley, who opened up Grasshopper Comics, was also like the person who wrote all those books or co-wrote all those books. They weren't great, but they were an indie publisher in the 90s. And so Grasshopper Comics has a pretty interesting history in comics, period, but also as a comic store in New York that's still around 20, 30, 35 years later. And then there was one other store, Collector's Kingdom, and that one was somebody that I've known, Mike the owner who is no longer here. But Mike is somebody that knew me since I was like 12, and he's actually partially the reason I met one of my closest friends, Larry. And Larry would play a big role in me getting into the indie comic stuff. So apparently, so Winnie the Pooh, yeah, right. Winnie the Pooh was unfortunately public domain, and it spurned some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. But hey, you know, the problem is when this stuff goes public domain, nobody does anything good with it. So, but it's interesting what happens with Sherlock. Sherlock might be something that gets used um, in a proper way. It's going to be interesting. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't think Batman will ever go public domain. They'll figure out a way. I know they've been trying to keep Mickey out of the public domain, but again, I guess that's next year. Steamboat Mickey. They should just bury that. They should bury that with the Steamboat. I don't know. I ain't got no love for early Disney, but what's there to like? Congrats. Thank you so much, The Destructive Gamer, My Comic Adventures. I appreciate that. Showed the clip earlier, but that's out. We got that out of the way. We'll do it again. Chromium M, yes. So they were all, Brian, they were all serial numbered. It was, I can't remember any of the other series, but Chromium M was like each book was serial numbered out of whatever, 100,000, 150,000. They made way too many of them. Like I said, the comics weren't good, but it was pretty cool to be at that store, going there at the time and being friends with the owner when they were putting that stuff out. And it's funny because that's where like this the entwinement of my life and comics started really there. I worked at that store for a couple weekends because John really enjoyed me being around so much. I guess I was a very enthusiastic kid, as you might be able to tell from this Polaroid photo that I showed off. So he had me come in on weekends. My mom would drop me off there, and I'd work in the back sorting books, and he would just basically give me store credit until I got into a fight with a kid because he was being an asshole. I'm not kidding you about this. I was like 14, and he had a Street Fighter 2 arcade cabinet in his store, and the kid was being a jerk, and I think he was being a jerk to everybody. And I told him, word for word, eat a bag of dicks at 14 years old. He didn't like that, the kid, but it didn't matter. I think we shoved each other, and then John kicked him out of the store. But I think John was like kind of upset at me for saying that, which I guess I can understand. A 14, 15-year-old kid in your store that works for you selling somebody else to eat a bag of dicks. Anyway, so that was that. But I love that store. As I got out of comics for a little bit when I got out of high school, well, we'll continue that. We got a question. So can I ask what's your next big pull? I recently got a huge Soups collection and got a few full miniseries, a couple first. So was wondering what's next big book for you. Well, I did say it earlier, but the overall goal is, if I'm buying I want to find an Amazing Fantasy 15, but 181, Hulk 181 is going to be the next book I go after. I don't know if I'll buy one outright, but there's something to be said with, you put your mind to something, you put it out in the universe, you talk about it, you I don't know. I don't know, but that's the next big book is 181, and then eventually an AF-15. Fantastic Four #1 and #5 would be nice too, but those books are a lot harder to find than an AF-15 and a Hulk 181. That's another thing that I think a lot of people need to understand about some of these bigger Marvel books. Amazing Fantasy 15 is not a hard book to find. You see one for sale every day, everywhere. There's always one. I mean, high grade one just sold, an 8.5 just sold for $522,000, I believe. But those books are around. They were heavily produced, and Hulk 181 too. Very, very common book. It gets less common as the days go on because we go further away from 1975. But Fantastic Four #1's a lot harder to find. Some of these DC keys, I mean, I won't even go as far back as Action 1 or Detective 27, but even some of the just like showcase the first Green Lantern, I forget the number, 23, 32, a lot harder to find. Speaking of old odd comics, I think you'll appreciate this. Picked up a nice crisp copy. The next issue one today, the prequel. You know what? I feel like I've seen that once recently, and I know what you're talking about. And I saw that book, and I was just like, I don't remember this at all. But I also just it's probably somewhere around here. But I have a poster from the Generation Next movie or Next movie. I forget if I think they called it Generation X on the Fox movie, which was an X-Men movie. Um, so so yeah, I started collecting. I got out of comics. I think it's a very typical thing for people my age. If you collected in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of people got out of comics in the mid to late 90s, 95, 96, 97, 98. Things just weren't as good. And we were all getting out of high school. And, you move on a little bit. But my buddy Larry, who was a roommate for one of my local comic store owners, Mike Bradley, and we became friends. We used to collect hockey autographs together, hockey cards and stuff like that. Um, uh, and and so Larry, we became really fast friends, and I could go into my life as an autograph collector, but that's a whole other tangent. But we became friends, and he was like, "Oh, have you ever read this? You ever read this?" And I was like, "No, no, no." So he gave me, and I can't remember if it was all at once, but he gave me Sin City, the first hardcover. He gave me Dark Knight Returns. He gave me or he told me to read Neil Gaiman. I think he gave me a copy of Gaiman's book Stardust, and that right there, those three things changed the course of my comics reading, my reading in general. It changed the course of my fucking life. 100%. Like, I don't think I would be sitting here talking to you all today about comics if I hadn't read those comics and dove into the world. He gave me The Killing Joke also because I never read any of that stuff. I was a superhero fanboy, and that's really it. So reading Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Frank Miller, it just changed everything. It really did. And when I hear people talk about it that were reading that stuff in the 80s, like Dark Knight Returns, as it came out, I understand. And I will tell you right now, if you've never read Sin City, Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, Watchmen, Sandman, you are truly missing out on some of the greatest stuff that's been written in our lifetimes. But we'll get back to that in a second. So I got to ask, am I the only one in the entire universe that wants the West Coast Avengers in the MCU? Well, let me tell you about the West Coast Avengers. They're not as cool as the West Coast Avengers. I don't think you're the only person, because not only is that team stood the test of time, they came out with a new team that seemed to be pretty popular. I just don't know if now's the time, but there might be room for it. I feel like they're going to do a version of it that's going to combine it with the Young Avengers. Like, they'll put them on the West Coast, but with She-Hulk being in the MCU out on the West Coast, you've got the room for it. You've got the setting for it. Stardust. Okay, so Neil Gaiman, who is my favorite author. I've talked about this a lot. Sandman is my favorite comic of all time. Stardust is a novel that he wrote. I guess you would consider it young adult, very much like The Princess Bride. And he wrote it, and I read it. But Charles Vess did the illustrations for the graphic novel that they did together. Charles Vess, just an amazing illustrator, painter, and so Stardust is Neil Gaiman. So a lot of people, and I spent a lot of time preaching the works of Neil Gaiman. A lot of people don't realize, okay, so he writes Sandman. The novels he's written, he's won pretty much every award you could win as a writer. He wrote Stardust, Coraline, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, American Gods, Anansi Boys, Neverwhere. I know I'm forgetting some stuff, but the man is one of the most accomplished writers and has such a brilliant imagination. So pick something up of his, is really hard to not enjoy his writing. The West Coast Young Avengers, right? doesn't really roll off the tongue, but whatever. Uh, do you think as a kid it was harder to digest Miller or more? Yes, 100%. I'm trying to think. You know what? I did read Miller when I was a kid because I read the Wolverine 4-part miniseries, but that's Claremont's writing, so I definitely did not appreciate the art as much. But I think if I had tried to read, and I might have, I can't say that I didn't. I just don't recall ever picking up Killing Joke or definitely did not pick up Watchmen. I remember seeing Watchmen. I was just like, what is this? I think it's very much like it's very. I mean, in hindsight, it's easy to talk about your brain when you were young versus your brain when you're older or 40 whatever. Um but I think there's just something. It's kind of like movies and music. There's things that just go over your head, like for example, uh Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, two fucking fantastic movies that I watched as a kid. I'm sure most of us in this room have watched as a kid if you grew up in a place where that was told, like, you should watch this. And you enjoy those movies for so many reasons when you're a kid, but then you watch them when you're like 18, 19, 20, and you start getting hit with these jokes, and you're like, these are PG movies, and he's getting a blowjob from a ghost. And he's talking about, having sex with his mom in the past. And so, like, you enjoy it on a different level after that because you understand it. And I think because Moore and Gaiman, I don't, yeah, and Gaiman and Frank Miller were such just great writers that were writing grittier stuff, or in Gaiman's case, more intelligent stuff. And Alan Moore, actually, all three of them were writing more intelligently. But I just think, there are some people, I'm sure, that found that stuff as a kid and loved it and got it. But when I started reading that stuff at like 19, 20, it was just blowing my mind in a way that I was able to really digest it and hold on to it. Sin City, I think, well, um, Sin City was the one that really blew my mind because artistically, nothing like Sin City ever existed at that point to me in my world. And since then, nothing's really existed. And you read Sin City and it's great crime and dirty and sexy and, all that good stuff. But it's just such a beautiful book. Sandman is great reading, but the art changed because you had Sam Keith that started, then what Mike Dringenberg went in, and yeah, Jill Thompson and Charles Vess. So, like, you never really got used to one art style. And with Watchmen, Watchmen was probably the last one that I really digested. And Gibbons' art is on another level. His visual storytelling is amazing. Um, but holy shit, you read Sin City, you're just like, what am I looking at? This is amazing. Charles Vess, his ASM covers 100%. His Web of Spider-Man covers are fantastic, and Spirits of the Earth is my single favorite standalone Spider-Man story. And it's set my favorite country, Scotland. So please, for the people that have never read it, right down there, Spirits of the Earth, pick it up. Like the jokes of Family Guy, kid sees, and cartoon. Yeah, Simpsons too. Like, you just, there's two ways to digest it. If I had to erase one character out of these five, who would it be? Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Wolverine, or Captain America? That's an impossible question to answer. Impossible question to answer. My gut goes with Superman and Cap, but what they did for the, Superman, if Superman doesn't exist, comic books probably don't exist in the way that we know them. Superheroes don't exist in the way that we know them because it has to start somewhere. Wolverine, if I'm going from a purely historical standpoint, it has to be Wolverine because without Superman and Batman, you don't get it the way we have it. And then without Cap, nobody gets to punch Hitler. And Captain America is so important for just that reason, but also for the fact that they created that character to really be and I never asked anybody that was in World War II this question, and I probably won't have my chance ever again. But Captain America really served as a grounding tool for American soldiers for some moral, just something to hold on to in a fictional way. And then Spider-Man is Spider-Man. Marvel's built on Spider-Man, so it has to be Wolverine. Personally, I wouldn't do it, but I have to because you made me choose. Being a collector for so long, how do you decide what should be slabbed and personal preference or rarity? So here's I toe the line between CGC slabs and hating them and loving them. And let's just take the seller out of me. If we take the seller out of me and we just ask the collector, Dave, honestly, like I would say 10%. Like if you have a comic collection of 10,000 books and you picked out like 100 books that are worth X amount of dollars, they're older. To me, the collector says slab books really only work if you want to preserve them and they're super old. Because there's so many slabs, but let me grab one right here. Let's see. I don't even know what I'm grabbing. All right, here's a good one. As a collector, this is a Star Wars number 68 newsstand in a 9.6 white pager. The first mention of the Mandalorians. Why do you need this slabbed if you're not going to sell it? You can have this book preserved in a bag and board in a box. You can take it out and look at it. You don't have to read the book. You could always buy a reprint or whatever. But this book it's 1983. There's a lot of them out there. Star Wars super mass produced, super mass printed set of books up until the end when the print run got lower. But do you really need to slab this? But if you want to, and you want just to have it in the slab with a number, that's your prerogative. But if you have an Amazing Fantasy 15, you're looking at something, first appearance of Spider-Man in a 3.5 is 5-figure book. You're looking at something that A is worth the type of money that maybe you can put it away and sell it and retire on some of that money. So it really just depends. I think if you're doing it just for your own, I don't know how to really say it. Do what you want, but don't waste a bunch of money doing it thinking that you're going to grade some book and it's going to be worth a bunch of money. Unless it's old and it's already worth a lot of money. I don't know, but the seller in me, I have to do it just, because people want to buy that stuff. It's a tough thing. But I think, Eve, if you're asking me personally, if you have a book and you were worrying, should I slab it, should I not? If it's newer, the answer is probably no, unless you really want to. So what collecting really comes down to is your personal preference. Nobody should ever tell anybody how to collect, truly, because then you're just telling somebody how to live their life and you can fuck off because you're not hurting anybody by collecting. But, you just want to think about the money that you're spending and what you're spending it on. Do you really need it? That's always a good question to ask. It's not like, like I shouldn't tell you not to do it, but I can always tell you my opinion, because you asked. There's so much that was attempted to be imparted to me by my elders that it took growing up. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything that we digest, right? As young people growing up, I'm so glad that some stuff was pushed on me, like the Beatles, because it gave me a really good sense of what good music is. But yeah, if I'm glad that it wasn't that nobody tried to shove anything down my throat in that way, except for medicine every once in a while. So weird seeing Jim Lee try to channel Frank Miller. Yeah, death blow. It's funny. And that's the thing. When I was collecting as a kid and Image Comics came out, I didn't know that he was trying to do Frank Miller's Death Blow. I was just like, oh, this is cool. And then I read one issue and I'm like, this is not that good. But it is a huge compliment. It is quite a compliment. And there is a huge difference between trying to rip someone off or, like steal their style or than to homage them and try and really do something that that looks and feels like their work as a tribute. Here we go. All right, so let's go to the let's talk. Well, okay, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. The question was, what was the first big book I bought? And let's throw up the other camera. Blarf. Here we go. Let's do this. Come on. Here we go. So my gateway drug, and we're going to talk about him a little bit, but there will be a time and a place to do a full episode. But my gateway drug, my first book, this is not the actual one, but the first McFarlane Amazing Spider-Man book that I bought was ASM 312. Such a great cover of the Green Goblin, the Hobgoblin. I remember having a copy of this that I had bought at a local comic show in Long Island for $17, probably like, I don't know, maybe 90, 91, 92. I was trying to read more because it was not easy to get his ASM stuff. Stuff was going up in value, and he was my favorite artist, and I just wanted to keep reading this stuff and checking it out. And so this is the first issue I bought. I got a couple of beat up copies of the Assassination plot. And that was 320 to 325 or 326. And so to answer your question, Destructive Gamer, my comic adventures, the first big book that I went out and bought, and this is my actual copy that I've had since I was a kid, is right here. It's a newsstand ASM 300. This is the first big book I went out and bought. I do not remember what I paid for this book, but it was not what the book's worth today, or what it was worth a couple years ago, 2 years ago. But this is my original copy right here, and I still have my original 316 also, which I got signed by Todd. So to answer the question, what the first big book I bought was, you're staring at it right here. I've had this book since I was, this book has been in my possession since, let's just say, 1994. I don't know. It was somewhere in the 90s, 93, 94. But I didn't have this book. I had to have it. I mean, it was Venom. It was Venom. It was the goo guy. If I had $1,000 to buy one book right now, what would it be? Well, just $1,000, one book, House of Secrets 92. Still waiting to get that book. I had a chance to buy it last year. I waited too long. The person sold it to somebody else. My fault, because I took way too long to buy it. And I really want to find that book in the wild, which, if you're not aware, House of Secrets 92 is the first appearance of Swamp Thing. And I've become a big Swamp Thing fan. It started off because I'm a Bernie Wrightson fan. Bernie Wrightson, one of the greatest artists of all time. One of the most unique. And that would be the book. And if you're not aware, that's one of those books that's impervious to any comic drought, any kind of, prices have been going down on books because of the boom. House of Secrets has not gone down. Not one fucking penny. It's probably gone up. For example, like a 5.0 in that book was like a $1,500 book, no matter when. So, I'm out of focus. What do you mean I'm out of focus, Jim? I don't think it's me. I think it's you. Am I in focus? All right. So appreciate the hell out of you. Well, I don't have all of them. I sold a lot of them. But I'll say this. Over the course of the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years, I've upgraded all my Amazing Spider-Man McFarlane books. So the ones that I had from my childhood, I sold a lot of those off, actually to people like you guys in the sales. But this one and the 316 have stayed with me because they're the ones that are super important to me. All right. And speaking of, let's just I missed out on a house. Yeah, yeah, man. It's one of those books that you shouldn't, there's certain books that you shouldn't hesitate on, and that's one of them because it's it's one of those weird areas where you just don't see it around a lot, but it maintains its price. So when you find one at a good price, you should jump on it. Um, I was gonna buy one yesterday actually, but I committed to buying something else rather large, but it hasn't happened yet, so I don't want to jinx it. I bought ASM 298, 299 as a kid. Yeah, yeah, and then well, and right, they made us think that. I mean, let's really be honest. 300s is the first full appearance, or maybe the second appearance, but yeah, 299 is the first appearance. That last page, man, that last page is a full page of Venom with his name. So that to me is an appearance. Uh, See, I told you, Jim. Happy New Year. What's up, Senny? Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We're going to take a look at that in a little while. Um, Rank the following artists, all personal favorites. BWS. All right. So here's the question, or, can you answer this? Rank the following artists. So it's Barry Windsor Smith, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Neil Adams, George Perez, and John Byrne. Are we okay? So do you want me to rank them in my personal preference or where they stand on the Mount Rushmore? Because this one's okay. So Todd is number one for me. I know he's not the greatest artist of all time, but Todd is number one for me. If I was doing this in a Mount Rushmore, or like just it's Neil Adams, it's Todd, it's John Byrne, it's BWS, it's Perez and Jim Lee. I love Jim Lee, and I was actually going to show this book because this is one of the first Jim Lee books that I pawned after, that I was in love with. I think this is why I'm so tied to this book. It's my favorite Jim Lee book of all time. Um, I was never a Captain America fan, and I don't think I really cared for Black Widow because she wasn't in anything I was reading. But this book came out, and I was just like, whoa, what the hell? This is amazing. And this is my PC copy. This X-Men book is just absolutely stunning. And it's in my opinion, Jim Lee's best book. You open it up and you get that first page of Captain America just diving into a bunch of swords. And I only put him at the end of your list, Brian, because I don't know, because when you think about it, like McFarlane, I don't see a ton of influence today in comics that Jim Lee's art has left. I think his career kind of speaks for itself, but he's had a lot of, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, he's had a lot of points in his later career where I feel like he's phoned it in. I remember when he came to DC, and Hush was absolutely amazing. It looks beautiful. It was a little predictable. You meet Thomas Elliott at the beginning, and you're like, oh, that's going to be the guy. But after that, he did Justice League, or maybe he did Justice League first. It was terrible. I mean, I am not a Jeff Johns fan at all. I think his writing is terrible. Or most of his writing's terrible, but damn, that Jim Lee Justice League run kind of put a little damper. Plus, Deathblow was whatever, okay, and Wildcats after the first couple issues was okay. That's why I put him at the end of that list. Not for any reason. I still think Jim Lee's one of the most captivatingly amazing artists of a generation, and he's changed comics. And what he's done at DC is there's some great stuff there. But that's just that. Funny enough, the antique store I was buying from today, they had a First Man thing, and since it was lower grade, I decided to do a lap and think on it. Yeah, you don't when there's thing in the title and it's a key, you don't hesitate. Okay, so yes, that was an elite group, 100%. I mean, Barry Windsor Smith's in a class of his own of people that just stunning, like the impact, and I think I wonder how many people in here have the same feeling if they read Weapon X when they were a kid of like being shocked by Barry Windsor Smith's art, maybe being a little confused, but then realizing like the storytelling of that book was something else that and this is personally to me, I'd never seen anything like that before. I never felt anything like that before. That and Infinity Gauntlet right here, and I'm probably gonna get my Weapon X poster frame because that and Infinity Gauntlet were the things that changed superhero books for me. I never see anything like that, and I've never enjoyed epic as epic as that. But so Barry Windsor Smith couldn't say enough amazing things about him. Let's get to that in a second. Destructive. I'll come back to that comment. One sec. We'll get on the movies in a little bit. Particular comic was made because Claremont asked Jim Lee what he wanted to draw, and he found that right, exactly. So that comic is a passion piece for Jim Lee because that's what he loved. How are your favorite writers? So my favorite writer of all time, Neil Gaiman. I'd put Alan Moore in the top 5. Okay, so this might not shock people. This might shock people. I'm not a huge Claremont mark. I love the X-Men. I love Wolverine. I think I like Claremont's Wolverine more than I ever liked his X-Men. There was just, and maybe I need to go back and read the Uncanny stuff because I'm more into dialogue, but there was just way too much dialogue in those X-Men books, and I wanted snick, 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 stab, stab, stab. So I got that in the Wolverine book. I don't dislike Claremont. I'm just not the biggest fan. Modern writers, Scott Snyder. I think Donny Cates wrote some of the best stuff in the last 20 years of Marvel when he did Silver Surfer Black, Death of the Inhumans, and the Venom run. Brian K. Vaughan, one of my favorites, 100%. But Neil Gaiman, I will come back to every time. Wow, there's so many. Kirkman is polarizing to me because Kirkman. Well, we've got a lot of comments. Kirkman wrote the best superhero book in the modern age. No. Robert Kirkman wrote the best superhero book in Invincible. He took Superman and said, "This is what I want from Superman." And so The Walking Dead is a different beast for me. I really enjoyed getting into it when I first started reading it. I read the first 100 issues, and then they killed Glenn. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm done with this book. I can't do it anymore. And then I read Outcast, and I really liked Outcast. Hey, yeah. So modern comic writers, there's some. I really enjoy reading anything that like George Perez and Jim Starlin were involved in together. Starlin wrote some really great trippy stuff. I've dipped into some of his older stuff. You know, Todd wasn't a great writer in my eyes, but his Spider-Man run really did it for me when he was doing his book. There's a lot. I could go on for writers for a while. And Frank Miller, I mean, I already talked about the influence of Miller and Moore and Gaiman had on my life. Garth Ennis and Mark Miller, probably my 2 other favorites. If I were to do a top 5, maybe it would be Gaiman, Moore, Miller, Ennis, Miller. Or Mark Millar, if you're looking at his name and saying it phonetically. Wildcats has to be one of the objectively dumb. Yeah, well, I do not disagree with that at all. It's probably dumber than Youngblood. Yes, and I'll say this: if you watched some of what Jim Lee was doing during the pandemic with the sketches that he was doing, or the pieces that he was doing, and then auctioning them off for to raise money for comic stores, some of the best artwork he's ever put out is that stuff that he was doing on his Twitter feed. Jim Lee made even Captain America cool. Exactly. Yeah, man. Oh my God. The Avengers were pretty fucking gnarly before the movies. And that's why they use those characters because there wasn't a lot at stake. And here we go. We'll go into it now. Destructive Comic. I'm going to post this and we'll keep talking about it. The influential comic movie. So when the Avengers came out, they took Iron Man and they put a very low risk character with a very high risk actor. And most people, I don't know if you remember this, but with Downey Jr. was just fresh, clean and sober a couple of years. He had a lot of trouble getting there sobriety. He had a lot of trouble staying there. But it was, believe it or not, it was Mel Gibson that basically asked Shane Black to cast Downey Jr. in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and that was the movie that got him the fucking Iron Man role. So the Brian's comment about the Avengers characters being dogs before the movie came out, they pretty much were. Like, I couldn't read an Avengers book in the 80s. I couldn't read or in the 80s and 90s. Captain America had Ron Lim drawings, so there was some cool stuff going on there. And if you like Johnny Romita, there was some interesting stuff in John Romita Jr. in Iron Man going on at that time. And Dale Keown was doing Hulk, but after Todd. So, what do I think the most influential superhero comic movie is? That's tough. I mean, it's not tough for me. If you're talking about for my life, it's going to be for the indie comic stuff. It's going to be Sin City. Sin City, really, 2005, or was that 2005? Yeah, 2005. And Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was amazing. That kind of holds its place, but it's X2, it's Spider-Man 2, and then there's a handful of others. Iron Man, obviously, but Sin City really was. I got to go back to Sin City a lot. I don't talk about it how much I absolutely love Sin City, but well, there you go. There's me and Frank Miller in 2000, and this is probably 2004 or 2005. And yes, for all of you at home playing score, that is me wearing a Warwick Dunn Atlanta Falcons jersey. What could I say? All right, we'll get into that. So I'm not a Claremont guy at all. Byrne was. I didn't. John Byrne's one of these people I truly did not appreciate when I was younger. There were certain pieces of him I appreciated, like I showed the back of Wolverine #1. But he's a later in life, somebody I love. And well, yeah. Barry Windsor Smith it's magic and it's trippy. I read that, it's funny, Senny, I read that as magically hippie, but it is trippy. All right, I'll get to some of these. Let's see. Mark Miller, there we go. Okay, so I didn't see that comment, but I didn't forget him. Yeah, that's how the show is going dead. I'm out. Fuck you. Yeah, man. Walking Dead is and Walking Dead cannot be understated at all. That is one of the most important comic books. Period. Full stop. That book saved a lot of things in comics. It saved Image Comics. It saved indie comics. It did. The path that we're on can definitely be traced back to a lot of the shockwaves that are felt and a lot of the things that are coming out in the world of movies, TV, and all that when it comes to the comic book adaptations. So much of that is due to Walking Dead. So it cannot be understated how important that comic book is. And it was the first comic, it's like one of the biggest selling comics in independent comic history that first issue came out, second issue had bigger numbers, third issue had bigger numbers than the second issue, which is unheard of. Ever at the Gates of Gotham miniseries was pre-Court of Owl's attempt. I don't think I have Treasure. I've called you Treasure before, but I'm going to write that down. Gates of Gotham. I think this is the first time I'm behind on the comments, and it kind of feels good. I think comic creators are like movie directors. Where they can fluctuate in quality. It's extremely rare to have somebody bat 100 each time they're up, but when they get the moments, it's great. I think Brian K. Vaughan has come close to batting 100 every time. He's come close, not every time. And for movie directors, I think the guy that's come the closest, who's got the longevity in a career, is David Fincher. And I love David Fincher. Can't remove Iron Man 1 from the top of my MCU wall. Yeah, it's such an enjoyable movie. Shane Black wrote more flicks. The Predator movie wasn't good. I don't know if that was his fault, but yeah, it just wasn't good. But he is a fantastic writer. I mean, shit, he wrote everything. He's been around since Lethal Weapon, and yeah, I loved his Iron Man 3. It was very underrated. It was different. Yep. Oh, well, oh, jeez. Okay, well, you just put me in my place because I forgot about I forget, The Crow lived in my brain. Uh, and if you've never seen The Crow, fucking turn me off and go put on The Crow. But The Crow lived in my brain as just a movie as a kid because I don't think I was truly aware of being oh shit being a comic book. But yes, correct that it is a visceral comic to read if you pick up the trade paperback. Um, it's one of the very few comics I could say that I've read that has moved me to a very emotionally unstable place for a lot of moments. Um, it's haunting. MCU is Blade: A Debt of Gratitude, 100%. 100%. Fantastic movie. I still think whenever I think of Blade, I think it's Tracy Lords in the beginning of the movie. She goes, Puzaskis, whatever the fuck she says. When are you gonna write your own book? I'm If I write a book, it's gonna be about my life as an autograph collector. I don't think I could write something that was fiction, you know. But I've written some stuff. There's a lot. I've written a lot. All right, where was I here? Good choice. X was a massive FSU fan. Followed him since a kid. Worked. Yeah, there you go. Oh God, I've worked on as a fantastic human being. He is. He is. Trevor is now treasure. So I wish to ask you a question. Here's here. Should heroes kill? You know, I know this is like a big. It is always a big discussion in movies. Like Batman doesn't kill, and I don't know. Yeah, Wolverine should. Yeah, the Punisher should. Look, it's what separates us from the creative imaginations, the fiction, the comics, the movies. It's what separates us as humans. As humans, we should not kill other people. We do not have the right to take other people's lives. That's not a right that we have. So, no. But it's a story. If it works in the story, then it works. I think there are certain heroes that work well that are, in that I don't kill, I don't take the life. Batman and Spider-Man and Superman, I guess. Yeah, I'm not a huge Superman fan. I thought when he snapped Zod's neck in Man of Steel, I thought that was exactly what needed to happen in that movie to give us a little different feel of what we're used to. Superman's 80 years old or whatever, 30, yeah, like 90 years old. Change him for a minute. We've had a gritty Batman who killed, as Frank Miller wrote him. We had Spider-Man accidentally kill that woman in Spider-Man versus Wolverine. Uh, so I think it really is it's a case by case basis. I'll watch any Alien Predator movie and defend it like a moron. Except Aliens vs Predator was terrible, both of them. Walking Dead 1 was fully returnable. I ordered 20 copies and remember ripping the. Oh my god! That's low key. Walking Dead #1 is one of the low key one of the books I really hope to find in a collection some point this year. It's such an important comic, and I could easily reread the first 20 issues and not be upset. It's like, and I don't give a shit if like this is spoiling anything for you. You truly, this book's decade old or more. But when you get to like issue 50 when they're in the prison and his wife and the child get killed, like I put that book down angrily, and I'm like, fuck, why am I reading this? Life is miserable enough as it is. But when I go back and I think about the amount of writing that Kirkman did and the amount of good writing that Kirkman did from the get-go in that book is just unreal. Whether you like the series or not, or you stayed with it or you didn't, he wrote his ass off for those books. Caught Crow on TV by accident when it was it's such victims, aren't we all? Yeah, the sadness that revolves Brandon Lee's death is it's such a terrible tragedy, but what an amazing movie, an amazing performance, and top 3 greatest soundtracks of all time. Don't even. Marvel should pay Wesley Snipes taxes. In regards to Blade, I love confusing people by saying some motherfuckers always try to ice skate up the hill. Dude, there's so much about Blade that's great. And then the second one and the third one is even funnier because of the stories behind it. If you've never heard the stories behind the third movie, Patton Oswalt, just Google Patton Oswalt on Blade 3. It's amazing. And I want you to do this next time you're feeling it. Watch Blade 3 and keep this in mind. Wesley Snipes does not appear in the frame of this in the same scenes as anybody else in the movie. There's cuts where you see Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel, and they cut it to make it look like they're all in the same room at the same time. No, they're not. And they digitally put Wesley Snipes in those scenes, and you can tell it's digital. You can tell. His eyes are closed, and they digitally open them. Any plans to make videos sharing favorite collectibles storylines? Yeah, I want to get there. I just have to figure out like what I want to say on those. The first one I'll probably do is going to be on the Batman Dracula 3-part Elseworld series because it's my favorite Batman, or at least it used to be. I haven't read it in a good 5 to 10 years, but Red Rain, Crimson Mist, and Bloodstorm are my 3 favorite Batman arc. How many people would Batman have to save if he did kill them? Oh, geez, yeah. Yeah, exactly. How many people would Batman have saved if he did kill? That's right. Okay. It's true. It's very true. A lot. Marvel needs to rip the Predator logo. I've never seen people with the logo. Ugh. Yeah, any of that shit, especially with the Punisher. I think you're talking about the Punisher logo, not Predator, right? You wrote Predator, but I think you mean Punisher. Judith isn't a thing in the comics. It's wild to me. Judith. What are we talking about? I don't know what I don't know what I'm missing. Blade is great. Snipes in general was always great. Always been on black. That's right. Passenger 57. All right. So now that I've caught up on the comments, I just want to show one other. So I think, some of you out there. Yeah. Okay. I figured. Yeah. Oh, Rick's second kid, Judith. Huh. I never got that far. Well, no, they killed the one kid with the mother, and then there's Coral. Unless he had 3 kids, he has a kid, an infant that gets shot with the wife in like the 50th issue. Anyway, sorry. I was about to go into a thing about conventions and meeting artists and stuff. So I used to go to Big Apple Con, and before Sin City came out, the movie, Miller was there all the time in New York, and I met him a bunch of times. Super nice, super fucking nice. And this was before I think his health took a turn for the worse. And then, obviously he looks like he's about 95 years old now, but he's still with us, which is great. But I always wanted to meet the one person that I talk about on this channel more than anything, and I finally did. His name is Todd, and you might have heard of his name before, but this is my childhood copy, or my teen copy of Spawn 1 that I got signed by Todd. And here it is right here. I still have it. It's one of my favorite things. And so I used to try and meet these people, and there's me and Todd. For you people that are still keeping score at home, that is a game-worn jersey from the Regina Pats, Regina, Saskatchewan, which is a junior team, and that is Barrett Jackman, who went to play with the St. Louis Blues. But anyway, there, if you see in the photo right here, I'm going to show it here. Let's skip this over here. Right there in my hand is my copy of ASM 316, which I still have, and it was signed by Todd, as well as I think that's a Mario Lemieux figure right there. But there's me and Todd. I've met Todd several times. Sweetest guy. He'll talk your ear off if you let him, and I was fine with that. We talked about hockey. We talked about comics. I don't remember everything. I know that we talked about hockey a lot because at that time he was the minority owner, a minority owner in the Edmonton Oilers, and so yeah. Well, I don't watch as much as I used to, Flush, but we're the same age, so we could totally have a conversation about Ed Belfour and whoever else you want to talk about, Martin Brodeur. But me and Todd, we talked about hockey a bunch. I met him, I think, like 4 or 5 times when I still lived in New York. And if you guys haven't ever seen, I've posted it before. I've shown it on the show before. That original sketch that he did for me at the NHL store when he was doing a signing. But I used to go to conventions to go along with the fact that there was comic stores everywhere in Long Island. I used to go to the smaller conventions there. I wrote down a couple of little anecdotes. There was I think it was called, it wasn't New York Comic Con as it is today, but they used to have the New York Comic Convention at the Jacob Javits Center. And then like it kind of stopped, I think, for a couple years, and they came back full force in the 2000s, and then which led to it being the size of it that it is today. But when I went there, and I can't remember the year specifically, but it was whatever year that Supreme #1 came out, which is the Rob Liefeld Image comic. And me and my oldest friend Seth, who I grew up with, and we used to collect comics together and go to these shows together. We were like 14 or 13, and we were at Javits Center, and we went to the Image booth where Will Sportasio was there, and I think Jim Lee was there, and there was a bunch of guys there. But Supreme 1 had just dropped, and they had just started selling the gold foil issue, and we were at the table. And from behind the curtain comes fucking Rob Liefeld. And at that time, Rob was the biggest name in Image, because I swear, I feel like that's when Todd took a break. And nobody saw Rob come out of the back. 1992. So I would have been, if it was summer of 92, then I was barely 13. And me and my buddy Seth saw him, and we took our gold foil Rob Liefeld issues, and we said, Rob, can you sign it? And then as that happened, everybody behind us, this massive crowd, fucking saw Rob Liefeld, and they surged forward, and Rob saw us, and he's like, quick, get under the table. And he got us under the table so we didn't get crushed. So, that was a crazy experience. And it's funny because years later, I was at the Javits Center again. I want to say it was 2008 at New York Comic Con. And I saw Rob outside, and I started talking to him. I was like, do you remember that happening here? He's like, oh my God, yeah, of course I do. I was like, that was me and my friend. He's like, oh my God, you made it. You're alive. And then even funnier is he was on his Whatnot stream. This was 2 months ago, and I hopped on Whatnot just to, I love listening to Rob Liefeld talk. And I said something about it, and he's like, oh, that was you. Oh, of course I remember that. So it's such an interesting thing, because I can only imagine there was not too many times where a near riot started at the Image table at the Javits Center. It might have only happened once, but all right. So yes, Todd is very friendly and easy to talk to. I ran into him at Emerald City Comic Con on the floor, and took a picture with him and just thanked him for the 900th time that I've gotten a chance to in my life. I recently heard the story of Todd speaking out and throwing down his father's retirement watch on the table when the Image crew confronted Marvel. Interesting. Yeah, look, you could, I think at this point, there's two sides of Todd. There's the Todd that speaks his kind of Tony Robbins, not rehearsed, but he says the same anecdotes. But then there's the Todd that I've seen interviewed where he basically just gets super honest and talks about this stuff. It's I don't give a shit about money and this, that, and the other thing. And I don't, he literally is only doing those CGC signings to appeal collectors. He doesn't charge for signatures. That's not his thing. I respect him for so many reasons. Also met him many times, signs everything for free. Yeah, no, he still does, Senny. I mean, the problem is when he does a convention appearance, they do like a ticketed signing where it's free, but you have to get a ticket, like, because they don't want 900,000 people lining up and keeping Todd there all day, because that he'll sit and sign everything. So uh, you're totally right on that. So that was the Liefeld story. I don't remember. I don't remember what year it was, but whatever year that Stephen Platt broke into profit, there was a show, a comic and card show in Hofstra at Hofstra University on Long Island, and the biggest name that was there was Gordie Howe, which was amazing, or at least the biggest name for me. And I got to meet Gordie Howe and shook his hand and got a signed photo. And we asked him about the time that he cut. There was a story where he, slashed some dude with a stick and fucking chopped a piece of his ear off. And he was really friendly. But Stephen Platt was there, and Stephen Platt, another big influence for me in the comic art that I loved as a kid. And I introduced myself. I went over to the table and we got a couple of comics signed. And I asked him to do a little. And there you go. Somebody asked me earlier if I've ever regretted selling anything. I got him to just do a quick head sketch of Wolverine on a backing board. And sometime, in the last decade, I sold it, and I shouldn't have. But I don't remember what transpired, like how I started talking, but Platt's Canadian. We probably started talking about hockey, and I was probably like 16 or 17, maybe even older. Maybe I was 18. And I ended up like sitting at his table all weekend, like going back and just like hanging out and talking to him. And it's just one of those memories that I like have, but I can't remember the specifics of our conversation. I love a Gordie Howe hat trick, a fight and a hat trick. And wait, it's a fight, a hat trick, and yeah, I think it's 3 goals and a fight and maybe an ejection. But yeah, so I got to hang out with Platt, and he's one of those people that, like, he was such an interesting person. He was such a nice dude and young guy at the time, probably in his early 20s. And getting to hang out with him. And I remember I feel like I went to McDonald's with like him and it was his like friend and his girlfriend or his brother or something. Anyway, fight, assist, and a goal. That's what it is. Hello, Amber. Hello, welcome. So, he was somebody that I was really happy I got to meet, and I never met him again. Like he was out of the comic industry, and now he's in the movie industry. He did a lot of storyboarding for Marvel, especially for Iron Man, and he's got a pretty successful career as like a concept and a storyboard artist. So yeah, I used to go to a lot of conventions. I stopped after 2008. Like the first couple of New York Comic Cons I went to when they came back, and I was kind of like over the crowds. I never went to San Diego Comic Con, but one of the most oh yeah, Platt is an awesome artist. He's just amazing, such a great artist, and like where he is now, his art is just it's a little bit more refined, but still so amazing. It still has so much energy to it. I have you can't see it, but behind the camera in my closet, I have that Prophet Wizard poster up, the pull-out poster. So yeah, I had a very interesting experience, and I talked about this very recently. I think it was maybe last week on Sit Down, or maybe it was Wednesday. But in 2010 or so, the company that I worked for years, it was a company that did silent and live auctions at charity events. I booked an auction with the Hero Initiative at the Orlando MegaCon, or Orlando Comic Con, in I think it was 2010. And we were going to host a table with them and do a big memorabilia auction for the 3 days of the con. And when I got down there and started setting up, they're like, well, this is, we have guests signing all weekend, but the 2 people that are signing they'll be here at the table all 3 days are Joe Benitez, who I didn't really know Joe's artwork at the time. Like I once I sat down and I started looking at his books, I was like, oh, okay, I recognize it. But then it was George Perez. And obviously I knew who George Perez was. I mean, hello. I've actually had this poster framed since 2008. And this thing's gone across the country with me. And so it was just such a great experience. Like he was doing raffle drawings, like you pay it's like $5 for a raffle ticket, and then like if you get selected, it's $100 for a sketch, and all the money was going to a hero initiative. So he was such a sweet guy. I mean, like the sweetest person, and he took the time to remember my name because I'm pretty sure he said something to me when I was like talking like I do, and I was like cursing a lot, and he's like, Dave, and I'm like, sorry, I'm from New York, and he just laughed. Uh, but it was such a great experience, and I got, I the first night we we went out with Joe. It was me and my buddy Patrick and a friend of mine named Justin who worked for Funimation, and so I got to be good friends with Joe, and Joe was on this show. He was my first guest on Sit Down and created the character Lady Mechanica, a professional of comics professional for over 30 years, and just such a fantastic person, and I'm glad that I know him. And George was it was such a great experience to just hang out with him for a couple days. And when he died earlier this or last year, it was sad. He had been sick for a while, and I'm glad he wasn't suffering anymore, but too young. It's such a legend. Anyway, that was a great convention experience. Lee Liefeld Valentino came to Portland, Oregon back when Image launched. The show organizers had things screwed up, and they just jumped out from behind the table and walked out. Yeah, I think there's been a shift in the way that signings and crowds gather at signings when it comes to comic book people over the last 25 years, and I feel like the Image people definitely started that trend. But yeah, if Chuck's still in here, I like comics. I like comics in Vancouver had a signing with all those guys a couple years ago, and they said it was insane. What is the rule on buying? All right, so Warlock asked, what is the rule on buying a collection? Is there a percentage of worth you offer? How do you know if the seller did not cherry pick it apart? Or you're just walking away from deals like that? So that's a great question because I don't talk about this often. I used to kind of keep it close to the chest, close to the vest, whatever the phrase is. But I also realize, and I've said this before on this channel, like I'm not worried. Nobody's gonna scoop a collection from me because I'm just doing this 24/7. But rule of thumb for me, okay. So my first rule is if you're interested in buying the collection and you're not sure what's in there, get in front of the collection. The more you ask for somebody to send pictures, the less likely you are to get it. Walking away as a buyer, you have all the power. You have all the power as a customer, as a buyer, as a customer. You have all the power. You know how many times I've walked away from a collection just because I didn't like, because I didn't for so many reasons. Whether I was using my tactic of, no, I'm not paying that, so go find somebody else. It's it's bit me in the ass like twice, and it's worked for me 100 times. But it's all situational. There's a lot of psychology that goes into it, which is weird. Uh, but there is like for the guy that I bought the collection from this week, he was somebody I had already bought comics from. So he contacted me because I told him like I'll buy pretty much anything as long as the price is right. And that's true for almost everything. Like unless it's a garbage collection, which I had gotten in front of. I went down to I drove 2 hours to look at a collection because it was like a pallet of comic long boxes and comics that were like zip tied. But what it turned out to be was like quarter comics from a store in the 90s. It was all garbage. But sorry, I don't want to keep drifting off for this question, but if they don't know what they have, which a lot of that happens a lot. I'll look at like the biggest comics in there, and then I'll just try and come up with a number that like I can't put myself in a position where I'm buying collections and I can't make money on them. Breaking even is not an option for me. If there's something I really want for my PC, it'll entice me more to pay a little more because I know I'm keeping that book. So I'm trying to think of a good one that kind of comes in with both. Um, for example, when I went to that garage sale and I got that Fantastic Four 48 and the X Men #2, Steve, who I actually became pals with, he just had numbers, and like I think he was kind of going back with what he had paid when he got the collection. It was just trying to make some money, and he kind of knew values, but we weren't looking anything up. And so, I don't know, it's different for everything. But this guy that I bought from this week, I didn't want to look through everything. I saw that Batman 251, and I saw the early X-Men, like the 56 or whatever it was, and I saw 96 as well. And I said, look, I'm not going to look through everything. I was 100% honest. I was buying, like, I could have brought that collection home, and those three books would have been the only ones in there. And, I know I would have been okay selling that stuff. But if I had looked and I saw the GSX or I saw the X Men '94, I would have been like, well, you got some decent stuff. Like, would you do? I would have said, would you do 1,000 and see what he says? So I always try and get a number that, like, I know that if he said no, I want 2,000, I'd have been like, okay. But I don't try and shoot low to rip somebody off. I try and shoot low with the psychology that that person's going to counter higher. So it really is like it's like a psychological tennis match. But then you get to somebody. There was this guy who I went to his house because he was doing a garage sale, and he had comics in the listing, and I forget what it was that I saw in there. But there was something I was like, oh, this is probably pretty good. It was like maybe it was a picture of a couple shorts and one long, and maybe there was a book in there that I saw. I can't remember. So I get to his house, and he's like, he's got four longs and four shorts, and I'm like, well, what's the deal? He's like, well, I'm not sure I want to sell everything. And I was like, all right, well, what are you selling? So he hands me a pile of comics, and I start looking, and I pull out that Marvel Superheroes 20, the Doom book, and I was like, he had that price for 50. I was like, I don't care what grade it's in. It was attached, so $50. But he's like, you could look through everything and maybe we could work something out. So I started looking through everything and I hit some good boxes. Like there was a Daredevil run, but the Elektra was missing. There was a Captain America 100 in there, but like, there were some other keys missing. And I was like, well, he's like, I know the first Elektra's in there somewhere, but it wasn't. Then I hit the ASM box, and the ASM box had the 252, 300, 298, 299, all that stuff. So I said, look, I'd be interested in buying it all. I don't even think I finished looking through all of it. There was some Mark Jewelers in there too. And so I said, what do you want? He's like, well, throw out a number. And I kind of don't like being the first person to make an offer, because there's always the part where you're like, well, I don't want to piss this person off by offering them too low. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to sit here and price every book out. That's your job as the seller, not my job. So I offered him like $3,000 for everything, figuring it was about $6,000 in comics. And he got all offended. And I was like, well, you tell me what you want for your stuff. Needless to say, he is the only person that apparently I've dealt with that doesn't like me. He told somebody else that I know that he didn't like me because I lowballed him. So it's a case-by-case person. I really just went off on that question. But here's the other thing. I'm in a unique position, and maybe I'm being a little too transparent as a seller, but I'm in a unique position. I don't have overhead. My rent, I work from home. I do this out of my house. So I'm able to offer a little more than most people. Like, there's no store in my area that will offer as much for somebody's collection as I will. And even if it's $1,000 more, because I don't have to worry about it, because you guys know how I operate. But it's the same way that I can afford to sell books cheaper than everybody else, or at least try to sell them for cheaper than anybody else. Anyway, hopefully that helped, right? I found that a comic book artist go to animation storyboarding to become, yes, and it gives them a opportunity to do more work and work and find more jobs. Zero bullshit in those disciplines, 100%. I have a Wolverine 3 twin plat variants, both colored and sketched. I don't know if I've seen them, Senny. Can you shoot me a photo on IG after this? I'd love to see those. I don't think I've seen them. Unless it's like a panel or a page from Wolverine Cable. I think it's called Guts and Glory. No way I like yeah, they did. I was talking to the owner when I was there a couple weeks ago, and he told me that was before the pandemic. He did, I think it was the 20th anniversary or 25th anniversary. Super rare, I imagine. I imagine those. I want your X-Men Claremont collection for $100 that I walk. Bye-bye. Bye, Amber. I'll see you later. It was nice knowing you. Cheers. That's the next level negotiating. Yes, that is. You know, older gentleman who's going blind and selling off his decades worth of comics, thousands, he says. And so for it all, it seems to be smooth sailing. Dude, that's that. You know, it's funny, Trevor, or as you have now been named Treasure. The first big garage sale or the second big garage sale I hit like where was it last summer? Or was it 2 summers ago? I don't remember. But I was in Tacoma. It was before I lived here. It was when I was still in Seattle. Uh, the guy told me he had a degenerative eye disease. He was probably my age or a little bit younger. And he's like, he's like, it hurts for me to keep these around because I'm not going to be able to read them anymore. And it was a really nice guy. He actually, you know, the money I spent I must have spent like $1,000 that day. But he kind of, you know, he's one of these people that like he doesn't know, but he helped me out with my inventory so much. I bought like 3 long boxes, and I bought his entire Marvel card collection, which put me on a path to being a Marvel card seller as well. All right, yes, good luck. I don't understand anger regarding offers unless it's something that someone is doing over. Yeah, right. That's the thing. Like, I was trying to negotiate with the guy, and he was just like, "Well, this box alone's worth $5,000." I'm like, "Then sell it." Like, he kept telling me like, "Oh, I know what this stuff's worth. I've graded some books." I'm like, when people tell me that stuff, I'm like, then my brain screams, then do it yourself. Like, sell this stuff yourself. The only reason people have garage sales, the only reason why people put postings to sell their collection, the only reason why that stuff happens is because nobody has that time to sit there and understand. I'm gonna go over another collection in a sec. Flush, you got me started. Oh, there's more comments. Okay. How dare you tell me to answer the question? Captain Emotional. What's your biggest $1 comic? Okay, here we go, Derek. This is a great question because all right. Well, so there's a legendary garage sale. So Joe, Comics Hunter Buddy, hey, who's been on this show multiple times, who does all my graphic design, who you see him in the intro go, hey. So we met at a garage sale where I got actually that Wolverine #1 that I showed off. We met at a garage sale. A couple weeks later, we were like exchanging texts, and I was like, "Dude, we gotta hit this garage sale." It was in north of Seattle, and he's like, "Dude, let's do it. Let's go. I'll meet you there at this time." Blah blah blah. So I got greedy, and I went to a garage sale 45 miles south that started 2 hours earlier, and then came back to go to that garage sale. Needless to say, I was 4 minutes late because I had to stop and take a piss. Joe waited for me up until a point. He's like, "Dude, I couldn't wait anymore." And I get there as he's already digging through, and he's got a giant stack. And on top is an ASM 300. But Joe gets, like he goes, but I have more Terminator vision. So I start digging through the books. And to answer your question right now, there was 3 books I got for $1 among the 150 books I bought that day. 3 books that I got for $1 each. ASM 316, Hulk 340, and G.I. Joe #1. All came from that garage sale, $1 each. So pick your poison. Either of those are my biggest for $1. I have a copy of, I think it's in this box, but I have a copy of Green Lantern 81. I've got that at a garage sale for $3. It came back as 7.5. When you say that, this is definitely going to help when I open my Northwest Coast Trevengers. Northwest Coast Trevengers. It's actual work to sell books. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It takes time. So let's say you've got, for the person that knows nothing about comics, think about the work. You have to learn comics. You have to look up everything. You have to figure out what condition and grading is, because these days, if you put a book up on eBay and you say, "Oh, it's in mint condition," and I get it, and it looks like and it looks like half the books that I got in that collection the other day, you're gonna be really pissed off. And then if you know comics, let's just say you're somebody that knows comics, somebody in this chat, and you know grading, and you know that the amount of time it takes to do all the listing, the shipping, it's a lot of work. So there you go. There you go. I'm always happy to help. Listen, if I didn't have any competition, this would be boring. Yeah, Derek. And there have been some other ones. There have been some other ones. It's just that one kind of really comes to my mind. And then the best garage sale was the one that me and Joe hit, where he got the 181, I got the X Men 2, the Fantastic Four 48. That the rest of that is just, and that's where we found the Weasel. eBayers are awful graders, except when you buy from me on eBay. But I suggest if you're looking at my eBay store, you just send me a message and be like, "Hey, Dave, can I get that from you at 20% off?" And I'll say, "Fuck yeah, you can." Oh, thanks, Avery. It's hard work buying comics, sweating. It's hard work buying comics. It's hard work selling comics. It's easy work reading comics sometimes. Sometimes you try and struggle. I don't know how many people this happened to later in life. I don't remember. Oh, I remember what it was. I just had a Rick James moment. My buddy Scott gave me a book called Confederacy of Dunces, and it's a very renowned book by his name's John Kennedy. And I started reading it, and I was struggling to read this book, and I kept picking it up, and I kept trying to read it, and that's when I realized, like, just fucking put it down and don't read it. And the same goes for comics. If you're reading something and you're like, this is awful writing, and you pick up the next issue, it's awful writing, stop buying it. That's my biggest problem with modern comics. There's so much garbage out there, but it's the same with the Bronze Age and the Silver Age and Copper Age. Like, there's so much garbage writing that it's okay to just put it down. Just put it down. Yeah, well, 100%, 100%. You need to do a highlight video of all the cover song clips that you sing in your. I'll see you at the crossroads, so you won't be lonely. I see you at the crossroads. It's just like my head, and I think this is a little insight to the person I am. Anybody that's known me for years will tell you this. Like, there is an endless rotation of songs that will go off in my head at any given moment, and I just have to sing them. Just have to sing them. Any thoughts on the new Eminem book homage? Eminem book homage by Illa Cinemani and whatnot. I didn't see it, and yeah. I didn't see it, but if you want, send me a photo of it actually on Instagram. We could open it up and share the photo. We could go through it together, or if you want to email it to me, you could throw it into an email, westcoastavengers@gmail.com, and I could look at it live. But I don't like the idea of it, whatever it is. Eminem and swastikas doesn't really go well together, especially because Eminem's not a Nazi. But I don't know. I can't talk about it. What storyline do you think is overrated? What do you think is underrated? Woo! Overrated. Overrated. Okay, I can't really say overrated because I'm not sure. And I've talked to me and Avery have had an ongoing conversation about this. I'm reading. I read Hickman's Infinity when it came out, and I didn't like it. I'm reading his new Avengers run, and a lot of it is good, and so much of it is bloated garbage. I'm trying to think overrated, but underrated I could give you. I think Todd McFarlane's Torment is very underrated, especially for like the community that we've gathered in comics these days that may not have read it. Here's one, and I haven't read it in years, but I really liked it. And I don't think anybody really talks about it because it kind of in a weird area. And maybe if Spiders is in here, but it's Hulk 301 to 310. It's about the Puffball Collective, and it's kind of like definitely inspired part of World War Hulk and Planet Hulk there's a big battle, and the heroes banish him, and like I think Doctor Strange like throws Hulk into a portal, and he meets this like puffball alien thing, and it's like this really deep dive that or introspective dive that Hulk goes into himself, and it's a very interesting storyline. And like I said, I haven't read it in 15 years, but I remember reading it, and really somebody recommended it to me, and it just blew me away completely. Um, I think I think that's definitely something that's worth reading. I got to get the issues right, but I'm pretty sure it's like Hulk 301 to 310. Not expensive books at all. I will keep talking about it. I think the Kelly Jones, I think it's Kelly Jones and Doug Munch or Doug Monk, however you say his name, Monk or Munch. The Elseworlds, Batman, Bloodstorm, Red Rain, and Crimson Mist is super underrated, beautifully drawn, and just it's basically he faces off against Dracula. He becomes Lord of the Vampires. That's all I'm gonna say. And another one of my favorite. It's a three-parter. It's a what if three-parter, and it starts with what if Wolverine became Lord of the Vampires, and it's three different issues where he stays Lord of the Vampires. It's very much, I don't even love vampires that much, but the idea of two of my favorite characters becoming vampires, Wolverine and Batman. Yeah. um and Thanos Quest is another underrated one. It is the story that prequel to Infinity Gauntlet, the story about how he gets the Infinity Gems. Overrated? I don't know. I'll have to think about that a little more. I don't save space in my brain for stuff that I don't really like. Does that make sense? Got a buddy wears his knee pads and mask pre-COVID. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I should be wearing gloves because you guys will see, you saw me in the unboxing video, like my hands get very dry and cracked when I touch too much paper, especially dusty old paper. You could sleep at night knowing if you don't want to read Bronze Age run Spiders comics. That's very true. I've tried to read, like, there's difference too, right? And I think this is something that a lot of people don't say, but there's really, when it comes to comics, I don't think there's a way that you could consider reading a comic wrong. Okay. When I was younger, I did not read half the dialogue in that stuff. It didn't do anything for me. I was there for the art, the pictures, the action. I think, and I think this has been said by comics professionals, and I think somebody will be able to back me up. The best comic is a comic that can be read without any words, because then you're really doing your job. And then if you're adding dialogue onto it to improve that story, sure, that's great. But the Larry Hama fucking the Snake Eyes GI Joe issue, unbelievable. But I think you can also read a comic without reading the story, and some of that Bronze Age stuff is better when you don't read the dialogue. Like, I haven't tried to read the dialogue, but I've been looking through a lot of the Doctor Strange, Frank Bruner, and the Barry Smith stuff. That's beautiful to look at. Jim Starlin stuff, beautiful to look at. Not always the best because the dialogue gets pretty repetitive. The hero we didn't need, but the one we deserve. Dave, you're the bestest. Gotta try it. Bye, Jim. So much more to come. So much more to come. I know that comment's 5 minutes old, but so much more to come. And we'll talk soon. Probably the best. Javon Jordan is a talentless schmuck. Oh, that's who illustrated. Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah, I don't know. There's so much that came along with the Instagram community of comics that I love, and there's so much, especially art, that came along with it, these variant covers that I don't love. But look, I'm not going to ever tell anybody not to like somebody's art. I'll tell you if I don't like it, but if you like it, that's fine with you. Clayton Cream. Fucking Clayton Cream. Happy news. Happy news SunDAVE, Sean. Jason, what kind of films am I into? Well, I'll tell you, my favorite movie of all time is a little known movie that some of you might have seen by a director that you might have heard of. His name is Steven Spielberg, and the movie is Jaws. Jaws is and I don't care, this is not an opinion, this is fact. Jaws is the single greatest movie of all time and one of the most important movies of all time. Goodbye. No. Jaws is my favorite movie. I am a Spielberg kid at heart, but my favorite directors: Spielberg, Peter Jackson, David Fincher, Social Network, and Social Network's. That's like that movie is comfort for me, which is a weird thing. Indiana Jones. I'm a Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. Those. I live and breathe those movies, but I love everything movie wise. I could watch a David Lynch movie and then turn around and watch an MCU movie. Chris Nolan could watch his films all day. Kubrick, Shining still scares the shit out of me. So I'm into all matter. I actually went to film school for a year when I decided that's not what I wanted to do with my life. But I'm glad that I explored that option. Desert Island, single issue and graphic novel, no omnibus. Whew. Oh, come on. No. Single issue. All right. Graphic novel. I'm going to go with the first Sin City. Yeah, the first Sin City graphic novel, which shit, what's it called? It's the Marv story, so that's Big Fat Kill? No. Oh god. It it's not that Yellow Bastard. Maybe it's Big Fat Kill. And then a single issue. Shit, man, that's tough. I'm gonna go with I don't know. I'm trying to think of a single issue that's impacted me as much. Maybe ASM 316. Like that knockdown, drag out fight of Venom and Spider-Man brings me so much joy every time that I revisit the McFarlane run. Um, maybe I forget what issue it is, 3 or 4, where they go after Thanos the first time. And then the Dream of a Thousand Cats or whatever it's called. God, I'm butchering it, but the Sandman issue number 21. Hickman is a great world building architect, but as a writer, definitely get overwrought quickly. Yeah, like So okay, so you want to talk about? All right, I'll get to some of these comments. I'm sorry. Well, I'm gonna look at the comments, but we're gonna hit a patch of image once. You are not rich, but you are rich with a 90s nostalgia bounty of image. We'll get back to that in a sec, Trip. 2, have you ever noticed how thick and heavy some of the paper are for these books? Yeah, they were doing that heavy stock paper. I mean, the Spawn one's got thick stock paper on it, gloss. Bronze Age, House of Mystery, House of Secrets, good stuff. Bronze Age Batman, also good. Yeah, DC, and I've said this in my live sales, Ryan. I don't know if you've heard me say it, but DC across the board is just better writing. It has been, and then there are some people will say that it peaked in the late 80s, which definitely can make a case for it. But DC's always got the better writing. I mean, Scott Snyder's Batman is so good. He writes so cinematically, and his team up with fucking Capullo, unbelievable. Yeah, we don't have to talk about one. Jaws scared the piss out of me as a kid. Well, it scares the piss out of a lot of people still, and it scared the piss out of a lot of wow, yes, go watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then what do I want to be when I grow up? You, Bryce, you. Uh-oh. Trevor's never seen Indy. All right. Don't worry, Trip. We're coming back to it. What comic that got away from me and still haunts me? Easy. House of Secrets 92. I had a chance to buy it late last year. I came back from a trip on my birthday. I was in North Carolina. I came back to the store with the intention to buy it, and she told me she sold it. So, and I don't blame her because I was waiting 2 months. House of Secrets 92 for Swamp Thing. Bernie writes in, I wanted to go to film school. Then I decided I better get a degree that will allow me to live comfortably. Fair enough, Sean. Yep, fair enough. Calliope. There we go. That's so good. Glad they made. Yes, yes. Dame to Kill For. That's the one. Thank you. There's a lot going on up here, and sometimes I forget. Shaw Brothers Kung Fu flicks. So I grew up on them. Have you, speaking of Kung Fu flicks, I recommended some movies to Chuck, What the Chuck, the other night. But one of them was The Raid and The Raid 2. Holy fucking shit. Those are two of the best action movies ever made. And The Raid 2, I still stand as probably the best action movie to come out and the best martial arts action movie to come out in the last 2 decades. Maddie, I have a nap. I have to nap for an hour before I take the baby night shift. But hi, Maddie. Maddie, congratulations once again and Happy New Year. Gotta watch Star Wars, Indie Jaws, Jurassic Park, then Light Magic. Yeah, there we go. Dave to Kill For. Industrial, yeah, man. Jurassic Park. Every time I watch Jurassic Park, Star Wars is something that I could watch that I don't always get new feelings from. Except more recently, where I think having Rogue One come out and Andor and that, and all that, going back and watching the old movies, I'm getting some new love for them. But there's something about Jurassic Park and Jaws. I watch those movies and they still feel larger than life themselves. They still feel special. They still evoke. I don't know that the first time, and this is just going off on a little tangent, but we'll get back to that question. Or sorry, what Tripp said about Hickman. The first time when I had bought the Jurassic Park soundtrack on vinyl when it was released by Mondo, like whatever, it was like 4 years ago. And the first time I put that on, legitimately, it sounded so good. It evoked, I started fucking crying. I absolutely just started bawling. It something about Jurassic Park that was the movie that was at the right time at the right age in 1994, and I'm like 14 years old, and I saw this thing that I've been waiting to see my whole life. Dinosaurs on screen that looked real. Anyway. All right, so Hickman. I did this crazy thing, and this is probably my biggest reading task of the year. I wanted to go back and read Secret Wars from 2015 because the hype started coming out that Doom was going to show up in the MCU and that they were going to do God Emperor Doom. This was before Secret Wars was even announced. And so I read Secret Wars 2015 was probably the last thing I read that Marvel put out when I kind of swore off Marvel comics. I stopped reading Marvel because it was bloated and because I wasn't reading things currently, I had no fucking clue what was going on in Secret Wars. So what I did, I was like, all right, let me read Ultimate Spider-Man from the beginning all the way to Secret Wars to see how Miles comes into the 616. Holy shit, that's a task. That's like 200 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man. Because Ultimate Spider-Man first volume goes from 1 to like 160 something, then Spider-Man dies and Miles comes around and there's like 2 more volumes of Miles before Secret Wars. Let me just tell you, you want to read some of the best and worst comics ever put to paper, read the entire run of Ultimate Spider-Man. Because there are times when Bendis and Bagley are flying high, and there's sometimes where Bendis is writing his ass off and Mark Bagley's like, I don't want to fucking draw this. So I did that task and I got to Secret Wars and I really fell in love with it from that. And I really enjoyed Hickman's writing for that. But now trying to go from the other side. So I started reading New Avengers to try and get it from the perspective of the 616 and the convergence and all that. And it's just really tough reading some of Hickman's over bloated storytelling. But I didn't want to forget that because Trip, that was something. Found 100 Bullets #1 white cover in my collection. Should it be good graded and flipped? I honestly, I don't know what that book's worth, but I don't think there's anybody buying 100 Bullets 1. I love 100 Bullets, and it's a great story. If you like crime, if you like Sin City, if you like The Sopranos, read 100 Bullets. Um, but I don't know if that's something. For example, one of the books that I still want to buy that's come down because the show got canceled, Why the Last Man, number one in a 9.8. Before that show was even announced, that was like a $400 or $500 book, hard to find, popular series. Brian K. Vaughan, fantastic series. Then when the show got announced, that book jumped over 1,000, and now I saw one for sale for like 350, and it's still a hard book with a low print run. So I don't know if 100 Bullets is. I don't know. I'd have to do some research before giving you a real answer on that. You're a rebel, Andrew. Loved Raid series. He also directed the best. I've never watched the VHS ones. I probably should because I know there's a lot of good directors that were involved in that I didn't even know at the time that I do know now. Oh, listen, Sean. Jurassic Park. If I agree with Ready Player One, fine. Ready Player One, fantastic book. That movie, I don't. You know how there's that theory that or that supposed realness that Tobe Hooper didn't direct Poltergeist, Steven Spielberg did. I don't think Steven Spielberg directed Ready Player One. I think he had some producing, some director's notes, but that did not feel like a Steven Spielberg movie. I saw Jurassic Park in a drive-through. It was shocking. Yeah, that movie was fantastic. Saw it 3 times in 1 week. I made my parents take me back. Raid 1 and 2, you will love them. Drive-through movies are fun. The last movie I saw in drive-through was the remake of George Romero's The Crazies with Timothy Olyphant, and that was in Florida, and it was I fucking love that movie. I rewatched that movie at the beginning of the pandemic. Probably was a bad idea. Better seen first time watching Star Wars Battlecruiser appear on the screen for the first time, or Jurassic Park Dinosaur first appearance, because I was not alive when Star Wars came out. I don't remember the feelings I got when I first saw that first scene in Star Wars. I can't put myself back in that mindset. Ultimate Spider-Man is God tier, though. No, Ultimate Spider-Man is great. I love Ultimate Spider-Man, but there's so many lows and highs in that series. And if you read that back to back to back, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, I thought I was living in that universe when I was done reading that. John Williams is a god, a legend. He is the greatest composer in all of cinematic history. Full stop. Period. End of story. One of my proudest parts of my collection is having the physical trades of all time. I used to have all of them too. I sold them in my purge of probably like 2010. Isn't the modern Marvel Conan based or less on the Ultimate runs? Canon. Oh, canon. Yes. So I don't want anybody to think that I didn't like the Ultimate Spider-Man run. I'm just saying, you read 150 issues of anything continuously of one character, and or 162 or whatever it is, you start to go blind. And you start to really notice the storytelling. Like, for example, I know the Spider-Man origin has been told to death, but at least when you're rebooting the character and you're restarting a character for a new universe, you got to give at least You got to give at least more than one panel for the spider bite. Something else, like literally, it's like one page, and like Mark Bagley's like, I don't want to fucking draw this, so it's just one panel of the spider biting him, and that's it, and then he's Spider-Man. Anyway, Mark Miller's run on Ultimates is what all of the Avengers and all of the look of those characters and the demeanor of those characters in the movies is based upon. He created him and Brian Hitch created the Sam Jackson, Nick Fury, and the way that kind of Tony looks like Robert Downey Jr. So all that stuff is due to the Ultimate. I would suggest reading the Ultimates 1 and 2, the full, it's like 6-issue miniseries. Maybe read like the first arc of Ultimate X-Men, but Ultimate Spider-Man is really what's worth reading. And then obviously, reading Miles. Miles is fantastic. Player One was a great book, not a good movie. Marvel Conan universe. There's still a drive-in theater running near. Yes, yes, it's on the peninsula. It's funny when during the pandemic I was going to go out there with a friend, but I didn't own a car until after I moved to Tacoma, so I wasn't able to get out there. Favorite horror movie of all time? Okay, well, we could go different categories of horror, but if we're talking psychological, The Shining is going to be my number one. The it's kind of like I could do it in decades. The Shining and The Exorcist, two movies that still scare the shit out of me to this day. The Witch, Midsummer, and Hereditary. Hereditary is probably the scariest modern movie in my list. And then like schlocky, I'm a Hellraiser 1 and 2, and low budget, early Peter Jackson, Bad Taste, Dead Alive, Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead is great, but Evil Dead 2 is king, and then Army of Darkness. But that's three different movies because like Evil Dead is horror, Evil Dead 2 is horror comedy, and then Army of Darkness is like adventure horror comedy. I could do an entire show on horror movies. Only part I didn't love is when they changed art for. Yeah, that happened when it was like more almost. It was almost a manga style. Ultimate Fantastic. Oh yeah, you know what? I started reading Ultimate Fantastic Four and I liked it, and I never finished it. So that's on my list for this year. Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk. Yeah, that's written by Damon Lindelof, and I really enjoy that because it opens up and he rips Wolverine in half, and that was something we hadn't seen before. Ever seen the Babadook? Babadook was good. Babadook was kind of like the first one of that modern era of like indie psychological horror. It Follows was also a great movie. Yeah, all of those that came out like starting around, I don't know, it was like 2009, 2005, 2006. The Babadook. Maybe it was later than that. Hereditary is, yes. Oh my god, Hereditary was such a fucking great movie. It's not for everybody, but for the people that love that really heady, like what the fuck's happening type horror, watch it. Hereditary was fucked up. Meet the Feebles is trauma. Like if you want to watch a movie that is just trauma, watch Meet the Feebles. It is the Muppets if it was X-rated. Love the scene in Ultimates where Fury and Cap shove Banner off the hell. Yeah. Oh my god. I got to reread that. I think I should traverse the rest of the Ultimate Universe and reread it because I needed to take a break after reading all that Ultimate Spider-Man. The math doesn't add up. Shouldn't Jaws be also your favorite horror? I don't consider Jaws to be horror, even though it is. Like Jaws to me is just the greatest movie. I put it in its own category, kind of like, hey bud, have you seen the new comic Spawn? Anyway, what comic made you mad? Not because it was bad, but brought out the emotion. Walking Dead issue 50. And Walking Dead issue, the death of Glenn is the maddest I've ever been in my fucking life at a comic book. 100%. At least that I can remember. Yeah. X-Men 233, Maddie's Dream. I have to read that, and it's not something that sits in my brain. But yeah, the death of Glenn was pretty bad. Pretty pissy. Pretty pissy. On horror movies, though, they did like a study using heart rate. 200 people found that Sinister one. That movie, I only saw it, I think, maybe in the last couple years. That's the one with the kid and who plays the father. What's his name? That was in The Conjuring. Conjuring was a great fucking movie. Conjuring 1 and 2. The third one was whatever, but the Conjuring 1 and 2 are two movies that really took me by surprise. They were really well written and well acted. I've yet to be mad at a comic book unless it's just a trash book. Yeah, there's that. Oh, it was Ethan Hawke. Then what am I thinking of? What's the one with a lot of these Blumhouse ones I haven't seen. So yeah. What else? There was some other kind of little anecdotes I wanted to tell, but we could always get to that next time if anybody has any other questions. I can't think of anything else comic book that made me so mad that I like slammed it down. No, I was pretty, like if you ever read Pride, Pride was that Brian K. Vaughan book that was, I guess, I don't know if it was completely based on a true story or true events, but it was about the lions that escaped the zoo after the Iraq was bombed, and it's a story about the lions and really sad fucking story. And he won a lot of awards for that book, rightfully so. Saw it once and never. Yeah, it's a great movie. How about the original TV? Tim Curry. The book explains why I hate Gene and Scott. Well, Scott's a dick. Read anything from the New Universe Marvel line? Yeah, that's some bad stuff. Um, Oh, let me just, by the way, here it is. Wanted to just show off. It's in pretty good shape. It needs a clean and press, but this is the book that I did find this weekend, or this week. Such an iconic cover. Um, excuse me. So, another one that I always liked, another artist that I really enjoyed his work as a kid, Joe Madureira. So, any of you X-Men fans can definitely either like him or don't. But he was somebody that I crossed paths with a lot as a teen and a young 20 something. I used to work at Electronics Boutique in Walt Whitman Mall in Huntington, and he used to come in there and buy video games there. And then I worked at Subway on the same in the same neighborhood, and he used to come in there to buy sandwiches. And then Madureira used to frequent the same comic book store that I was a local to, and so yeah, he was always such a nice dude. But one of my other '90s favorite artists. Estimated grade on that, I'm going to say it's a 6 to 6.5. But after, if somebody can, like there's a little staining on the back, if that can come out, maybe a 7. Back of the napkin. Scott is a dick, but Wolverine always trying to smash on. That is true. That is true. But Wolverine's been around a long time. He's 90 something years old, 100 years old. Did they ever date him? Like when was he born? Because he was in World War I and World War II. So basically, the universe made you stalk Joe Madureira. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thanks, Obama. Have I ever read We Three? We Three. Okay, so yeah, you brought that up because of Pride. We Three is one of the most beautifully drawn action comics, and I don't mean Superman, but action comics that have ever been put. I am a self-professed non-fan of Grant Morrison, but I love Frank Quietly. I wish that Quietly didn't do most of Grant Morrison's books, and I like All Star Superman's great, but like I tried to read that X-Men stuff, the new X-Men, and I couldn't. Like the Silvestri issues were pretty too. But We Three, I can highly recommend that. That is a fantastic book about these animals that are turned into these weapons for, I guess it's the U.S. military, and they escape. And it's such a great comic when it talks about action. Wolverine is the original Clayton Crane. I guess we could say that. He's always trying to steal Jean Grey and whoever else he can. Change of artist made me mad a few times when Larson picked up. I know some people that don't like Larson. His name's Bryce, but I love Larson. But it's hard for me to be like, oh, I can understand why you wouldn't like that. But I guess anytime that something like that changes, I can see why if you're really into it. For me, it was a change I welcomed, but I can understand if you're not happy with it. But it just wasn't something I felt. Ultimate Spider-Man Toy Biz Edition, I think fourth print, other issue I found also. Oh, alrighty then. I think I traded a giant size X-Men and some other 80s X-Men for Batman the Cult series. Yeah, not a good trade. Although we love Bernie Wrightson and Jim Starlin here. Yeah, not just one you can find everywhere, and the other one's going to cost you. Yeah, sorry, Ryan. But it happens. It happens. Who's the biggest slut in Marvel history, male or female? Oh, it's fucking Wolverine. I mean, it's Wolverine. Dare I say it's Peter Parker? I mean, he's with Black Cat, he's with Mary Jane, he's with Gwen Stacy. No, I think he's more of a like. No, it's not Peter. It's Wolverine. Or Batman. Batman sleeps with everybody. Like he finally settled with Catwoman, but he had like 75 years of sleeping around. Like he had a George Burns life of sleeping around, and then he married Catwoman. Alex Ross, I do love Alex Ross. I wish Alex Ross did more books like Marvels that had him doing interiors, because like his cover work's amazing, no doubt. But it would be nice to see him do something like Marvels again or Kingdom Come. Two fantastic books. If you've never read the X-Men '94, I'm thinking is probably like a 7.5 to an 8.0. It's actually really clean. I'm gonna have to balance it against the one that's sitting in my Claremont run, and then the other one. Well, we'll see what happens. I think Wolverine is from the 1800 or something. Yeah, like I feel like he's like turn of the century. He was born James Howlett. Yeah, We Three is one of those books. Well, I think there's something to be said as human beings. We don't like. Well, I shouldn't say that. We love animals so much that even fictitiously, comics, movies, when they get injured, they get hurt, they struggle, they die. Especially when they are characters. Oh, it's destructive to our emotions, but makes us know we are alive, and it keeps us compassionate. I mean, we should know these things. We have to know pain, otherwise we don't know compassion. He was a teenager around the time dynamite was invented. All right, well there you go. Comics that made me cry. There was something I read recently. Shit, I was talking about this too recently. That really moved me. Pride was one of them. The end of fucking see, it always involves animals. The end of Why the Last Man, where years later, you find out the fate of Ampersand, the monkey. The end of Sandman was really moving. But there was something I read recently which really destroyed me. Oh, it was The Crow. Holy shit. God, that put me through the ringer. So those come to mind, Brian, at least for now. Sure, Larson had to follow McFarlane, but he did it twice, and I think that wasn't something that he wasn't upset about because his style was different. It's kind of, like Larson is I'm trying to find the way to say this. Like, you look at Larson's art, I should say it like Ryan Otley and Larson kind of have the same energy to me. And I know I've said this on the program before, and I've said this to people in private conversations. Art, there's so much in art, and I'm an energy person or an emotion person. Is it like I don't know technical stuff, but there's so much energy in Larson's art, and I think about how much energy is in Ryan Otley's art, and I kind of put them in the same. They're not their styles don't look exactly the same or even close, but energy wise, they kind of follow the same pattern for me. But look, Larson is going to do something that most people will never do. I mean, he'll pass Dave Sim, but his Savage Dragon is all him. He writes it, he pencils it, he inks it. I think the only thing he doesn't do is color it, and it's a hell of an accomplishment. Savage Dragon. Yeah, he is a comic nerd, and his original art collection apparently is something that is almost unrivaled. Yeah, yeah. There you go. Parker just can't make up his mind on which girl he wants. It's true. Because yes, Tony Stark. Oh yeah, Tony Stank. Biggest slut. Just wish Alex Ross would use more diverse. Yeah, and a lot of his characters tend to look the same because he uses the same photo reference. Yeah, that is big shoes to fill. Huge shoes to fill, but it's interesting. That issue of Amazing Spider-Man 350, that last page has that one page pinup. It's Spidey done half by McFarlane and half by Larson. Oh yeah, Essex County. I never read. I never read Essex County. I've never read Essex County, and I've been meaning to go back. I read Sweet Tooth when it came out. That's another emotional roller coaster saga as well. And then I read Underwater Welder, but I need to go back and read Essex County. A Canadian writer who loves hockey. Sandman, yeah, Sandman, unbelievable. What's up, Cal? Your Ultimate Spider-Man story made me think that it might be fun to pick a runner arc in the future and do a Davey book club. I'd be down for that. I've been thinking about that. Me and Avery talked about it. I know me and Angel talked about it. I'd be open to doing something like that. And if anybody, like we talk about it, and whoever wants to join live can join live and talk about it, or we could just do a chat. But maybe we'll do that. Maybe I'll do that with the Batman Bloodstorm, Red Rain, and Crimson Mist, or maybe we'll do Sandman, or we could do a Marvel one that I've never read before, because there's a big gap. There's a lot of Marvel stuff I haven't read. I'll just be honest. I've read Civil War. So Mark Miller 100% is the reason why I kept reading Marvel, and I loved Marvel. Like Civil War, Old Man Logan, The Ultimates, some of the best stuff. Old Man Logan, as much as I liked Weapon X, okay, I'm not going to say it. It's on par with Weapon X. Old Man Logan. Up the movie. Movies are different. They do different things to you. Consider selling the X-Men 94 at some point, but it takes me a minute to get through a collection and figure out what I'm doing with everything. I bagged and boarded the big books, but I have really not put enough time. I don't have a lot of time yet to figure it out. But one of them is going to be for sale eventually. Talking about more obscure comics, even though it came from Marvel, I never hear of anyone who read the miniseries other than myself. Identity Disc. I remember it by name, but Trevor, I don't remember a goddamn thing about it. But I like to talk about the obscure Marvel stuff that came from like the late 90s, early 2000s, like when they had Strange Tales come back, and the one that I've talked about multiple times, the Peter Bagg issue, the megalomaniacal Spider-Man. So good. So good. Larson and Otley are fantastic at drawing fights. Oh, God, yes. 100. Like, I've been meaning to go back and reading the Sinister Six storyline, but that Larson did, holy shit. Both of them. The Revenge of the Sinister Six, and then the one that he did in the Adjectiveless Spider-Man. And then Ryan Otley, yeah, the Invincible stuff that happens in that, the fight scenes, some of the best in comics. God Loves Man Kills by, it is powerful stuff, and also really tough to get through because of the dialogue. It's not bad dialogue, there's just a lot of it. Don't think Savage Dragon ever break continuity. Nope, it never did. No. Happy New Year, Derpa. How was were you over in the other show? Was it a good show? Funny thing is that I don't think I've seen a copy of Savage Dragon on the shelf in 20 years. Yeah, most stores don't carry it, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny because the reason why I stopped buying Spawn was because when I moved to Seattle, store didn't carry it. And I thought every store carried Spawn. And it's even more so with Savage Dragon. It's like, that stuff, if it ever blows up even another level, is going to be worth so much money. Sorry, it's not going to be worth so much money. It's going to be sought after because all of the Savage Dragons run post like 200 is low print run, and it's still a low print run. Have I read the Fantastic Four Full Circle? Brian, I haven't. I have it. It's sitting on my dresser, on my pile, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. But I'm excited to read it. Wolverine Bloodlust is one of my favorite. I know that book. I can picture the cover in my head. And he's like crouched over in the snow. Is that the one I'm thinking of, or is Bloodlust another graphic novel? God, okay. I'll have to try and get through it again. Miller linked everything he did in Marvel back in the day. FF, Old Man Logan, and Marvel 1985. Yeah. Oh, I totally forgot about 1985. The book he did with Tommy Lee Edwards, who whenever I am going to say his name, I always about to say Tommy Lee Jones, but it's not Tommy Lee Jones. You have the story arcs. Stand by that one. Okay, yeah, like God Loves Man Kills is a great story arc. The Barry Windsor Smith one, and Days of Future Past, obviously, to me, is the best of Claremont. It's a book from maybe 2003 that teamed up Sandman, Vulture, Deadpool, Bullseye, Sabretooth, Juggernaut. I have flashes of having that book and selling it at a very early claim sale at the end of 2021. So now I'm kind of remembering it. God Loves Man Kills is Claremont's masterpiece. But all right, well, like I said at the beginning of the show, I've always appreciated Claremont. His Wolverine stuff was more important to me because it was the first stuff of his I read, and maybe I just need to start at the beginning and go through all the X-Men run. I mean, I've read it. I've read so much of it, but maybe there's just gaps, and maybe I'm remembering stuff that well, Days of Future Past I read a bunch of times, so I know I love that. All right, so I did remember that one correctly. Savage Dragon Batch issues over 50 are scarce. Yeah, I have a bunch, and nobody ever wants to buy them. So I haven't read anything that Daniel Warren Johnson has done. I really want to read the Beta Ray Bill, and I've been meaning to read that. So no, and I heard that the Wonder Woman one is great too. Most recent stuff I've read. Well, I really enjoyed Donny Cates' crossover, which hopefully he comes back to it at some point. I was reading Noctera, A Nice House on the Lake. I love Something Is Killing the Children, but I have a lot of gripes with it in its artwork. Story-wise, it's fantastic. The pace of it's fantastic. I don't dislike the art on it, but Jesus, the panel layout on that book pisses me off to no end. You'll be reading it and it'll be like panel, 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 panel. And then the next page you read it, it's like panel, 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 panel. And like it can't decide on how to tell artistically the art direction of that book, but it's a fantastic story. Marvel DC, not reading a lot. The Silvestri Batman has been fantastic, and I'm excited. I still haven't picked up the second issue of Trad Moore's Doctor Strange, but I am looking forward to that. So always looking for recommendations. The Daniel Warren Johnson stuff is somebody I want to explore, and there's definitely more stuff out there that I've been told to read. I think Sean was the one who told me to read Scotty Young's The Me You Love in the Dark, and then Avery sold it to me, and I loved it. So I'm enjoying reading some of Scotty's stuff that he wrote. I think it just stands on its own if you read all that shit leading up. Okay. I believe you. I like the idea of a group reading list book club. Well, let me work on it. Let me come up with a good night, Eve. Yeah, let me think about it. I'll write down some suggestions and maybe I'll do a poll and we'll get a reading club going. And we'll do like, I'm not going to try and make I don't think it would be smart to be like, oh, you have to do it in a week. Maybe like a 2-week window or a 3-week window. I heard that Do a Powerbomb is fantastic, and it's a wrestling book. It's based off a wrestling move, so it sounds like something I'd be interested in reading. And I've seen the cover art for it, so I know I'm gonna like the artwork. Yeah, same. Have I read Planetary? Yes. Despite Warren Ellis being, a shitty creep, Planetary is fantastic. Transmet is fantastic. Some of his superhero books have been just. He is a great writer. The British invasion stuff, there's so much about when you talk about the British invasion, whether it's music, whether it's movies or writing, I can get fully behind it. Or you want to call it, if you want to broaden it to be the UK invasion, Neil Gaiman, Warren Ellis, Garth Ennis, Mark Miller, Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, like all these guys, just I get behind all their stuff. Preacher is absolutely fucking fantastic. If you've never read Preacher, Ennis's Punisher run, by far the best Punisher stuff that's ever been written. With his work with Steve Dillon is legendary, and we lost Steve Dillon a bunch of years ago, and he was actually back doing Punisher with Becky Cloonan. But those guys, fantastic. And British Invasion, you go back to the Beatles, but Blur is better than Oasis. Don't at me. Claremont X-Men changed my life. Well, and that's the thing. I don't know if yeah, Amber's still in here. Like, there's so many people that will say the same thing. I love Chris Claremont. I watch interviews with the dude, and fantastic guy to listen to talk. And he got the short end of the stick when Jim Lee came in, but he ended up coming back to X-Men and doing another 100-something issues anyway. There we go. Fair enough. Flush, I almost just called you. I don't even want to say it. I think you should give X Factor another shot. Start with issue 1. I don't mind trying it. I told you I just read that standalone one that I didn't love, but yeah, it's a book that I never really read. I still remember the Jay Lee cover with Apocalypse and Archangel on it from the Executioner's song that I loved. The fucking Jay Lee's artwork was so underrated. All right. I'll have to watch it or read it. Here's someone I like that I haven't mentioned, Colin Bunn. I don't know. I know the name, but I don't know what Bunn has really done off the top of my head, as opposed to Eric Powell, that I read Goon. Like, I read it. There was this point where I swear to you, all I was reading was Goon and Hellboy and BPRD, and it's all I wanted to read, and it's all awesome. Mignola, Guy Davis, and Eric Powell, and then you've got like the Richard Corbin Hellboy issues are fantastic. Hellboy in Mexico. Those are, do yourself a favor. If you like horror, pick up any of those books. BPRD, Hellboy. Start with Hellboy. Work your way through Hellboy. Then when they introduce the BPRD, start reading BPRD, and you can read Goon at any time. They're not in the same universe, but Powell is like a student of Mignola, a guy that's definitely in that same universe that Mike Mignola draws in. And man, Mignola is a beast unto himself. You know what? Fuck it. I'm putting the Mount Rushmore that we created earlier, I'm putting Mignola on there. So I think the X-Men 97 series will drive X-Men books up. Value-wise, no, I think it'll have a little bit of an impact. I don't think they're going to go up to the level that they will when we first get any type of X-Men in the MCU. From just a standpoint of not spec. What I'm talking about is what's going to happen. You're going to get, like, what you won't see the boom that you saw during COVID, but you'll see a boom in the way that, think about all the people that know the X-Men throughout the world that have been influenced and lived their life loving the X-Men. When that shit comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's going to just drive more people to want to own that stuff because they are new to the X-Men and they want to own the history. So I think you're going to see the biggest impact. That's kind of why I've been just holding on to a lot of my X-Men stuff, because I know that if I try and buy some of these issues that I want to own for my PC, it's not going to happen when that stuff hits. But the animated series will definitely drive some of the interest, but the animated series is like the tip of the iceberg. Sword, yeah, the Sword, and what was the other one that they did? Something Sisters. No, the Luna Brothers. Man, I loved the first two Luna Brothers projects. Alex and Ada, and the Sword. Alex and Ada's a trippy kind of like Ex Machina. Not the comic book, the movie, Ex Machina type sci-fi, and then the Sword's just a great action comic. Have you read the Just a Pilgrim by Ennis, Punisher? Just a Pilgrim I've never read. Maybe I have. That's about, what's his name? The Killer of Killers, right? Or is that something I'm thinking of? Saint of Killers. Maybe I'm wrong. And then the Pope Antichrist book. Not Preacher. What are we talking about? No, no. Wait, I'm not sure. Wait, oh, Harlan Harrow. I've never read Harrow County. I do know what it is. Goon High, Goon One. Yeah, I'd love to grab the first appearance of the Goon. That book. No, I don't think it's Goon One. I think it's something else, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, I've never read Harrow County. I do know of it. Hellboy in Mexico is such a fun read. Yes, 100%. Is Dreamwalker Zero? Is that the first appearance of Goon? Remind me. Mignola is god tier. Yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Like somebody's got to take that and turn it into $1 billion. Yeah, Sean. Yep. Yep. Well, I'll definitely help you with some of that. I already told you I got your list, so we're all good. I just haven't had the time. Girls. Oh, there we go. So I'm a little behind on the chat, about a minute. Don't make me get more in X-Men. I've been avoiding it. Look, okay. I think both. Okay, so Batman 100%. This is applicable from a buying and collecting standpoint. You do not need to collect Batman runs. I firmly believe you can, if you want to read, like you can grab the hardcover of Long Halloween. You can even grab the omnibus, but you can pick like one artist in Batman and just go for a couple of those books and then like stop. You can do the Neil Adams stuff. You could do the Todd McFarlane stuff. You could do the Marshall Rogers stuff. You could do the Mignola stuff, which is inexpensive. The Sam Keats stuff. Sure, you're not going to go back and get Tech 27, but same with X-Men. Like you can get the Claremont run, which sure, there it's going to set you back some cash, or you could just buy like 94 and call it a day. I don't know. It depends on how you collect. Okay. All right, Brian. That's what I thought it was. Batman is a hell ride. But like you could buy the Snyder run, the Snyder Capullo run. I don't know. I collect weird. I don't have a lot of Batman issues except for some big keys because there's so much of it. But you guys know what I collect. I mean, I collect McFarlane. I collect the Liefeld. I have almost everything. Uh, I want to. You know what? To me, and I think one of the underrated ways or things to collect that I think personally, I think it's great. Monetarily, I don't think it's super expensive, and I think it has a lot of value if you want to look at it that way. Artists first, like Coyote, the first McFarlane, Megaton, the first Liefeld, Neil Adams, the first. Well, the Archie book is expensive, but still, artists first. The first Steranko is not a super expensive book. The first John Buscema is not expensive. The first Jim Lee on a Marvel book is not super expensive. The Santa Claus Samurai one's a little pricey, but like some of these books are so vastly underrated, and it's fun to see if you're into an artist, if you're into McFarlane. One of the most fun things to do is go out and buy that Infinity Ink run and watch him get better and better in every fucking issue. Uh, you know, sure you can't go out and just buy early Kirby. Fine, that's not happening. You don't have that kind of cash. I don't have that kind of cash. But you can get some early Neil Adams and really work from there and see how he got better. You can get a lot of these artists that we love and we talk about. Just go out and pick up their first artwork. Was loading a short box. No, I don't have a good one for sale. I said I want one. You'll buy X-Men 94 if you'll sell it. You need to have more than 3 days patience, my friend, and so does everybody else. But I do have Snyder Capullo run, so there you go. I've definitely sold you that number one at least once, maybe twice. How many titles of Batman going on right? Yeah, that's a different story. There's like 46 Batman titles. Yeah, well, that's a more expensive game to play. The expensive game is buying first appearances of fucking characters in the indie circuit. First Hellboy in that the first iteration of Hellboy in that Salt Lake City comic program is like a multiple $1,000 book. First Usagi Yojimbo, as I learned this year, very expensive book. So first appearances are expensive. they get expensive, especially your indie characters, and then obviously your golden or silver age characters. I'll buy any stereo. Yeah, yeah. I want the Claremont run because of older issues. Yeah, there you go. See, and look, comics are, things are dipping a bit, and I think X-Men is probably, it's actually it's hard for me to say definitively, but it's definitely a good time to try and buy some of those X books. I've watched the prices of GSX come down to, they're still expensive, but they come down. Sell me all your new books right now. Okay, done. Wire transfer me $15,000. I need a mid to high grade X-Men 94, Dave. Please keep me in mind. Oh yeah, like I will say right now that book I will figure out is going to have to be an auction. Like I can't, there. I sold. It's funny. I sold one a couple months ago, but where was everybody? Where was it? BA12 is a book I will own this year. Flush, you guy right here. 9/8 raw potential, or just a straight goddamn 9/8 slab, right here. Jeremy Renner in critical but stable condition after big snowplow accident. Jesus. Well, yeah, that's all right. As long as it's in stable condition, but that's that's crazy. I don't know how you get to a snowplow accident, but good vibes out to Jeremy Renner right now. It's interesting to see McFarlane on a different Marvel title like Daredevil 241 and stuff. Yeah. His 241, his GI Joe 60, the Hulk stuff, but he does that one page story in Marvel. It's interesting to see him. Yeah, I just read about that. All right, fair enough. Yeah, no, I've come into contact. I've had 3 of them this year or this past year, and I kept 2 so far, but I sold 1. But yeah, totally down to always try and make these books available to people. Seeing a 6-armed lady stab another lady in the face with sticks. Yeah, I don't know what we're talking about. Hey, you got airlift. I see you. Good vibes indeed. Can't be living. Yeah, and just he seems like a decent dude, supposedly. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, so I've been going live for 3 hours. Voice is a little sore. I'm glad that I got to talk about some of this stuff. There's a lot more in the store. I want to show off this picture again because I'm never going to show it off again in public. But that is me holding my first copy of Spider-Man #1. If there are any other questions you have, you throw them in now. But I like the idea of doing a book club. Actually, I'm going to write that one down. And then Harrow County, Arthur Harrow County. And or is it Harrow Country? And then book club. Claremont run is so good. The new team is thrown together, loses Warpath, and they get sent out to the Savage Land, and they're away from Xavier. And then Charlie's like, "Oh, one of the greatest." Speaking of the X-Men, one of the greatest what if issues is like, what if the X-Men had died on their first mission? And it's just like the cover is like, it's like Professor X crying. Oh, it's so ridiculous that What If was so good in the 90s. Okay. I didn't know that California mountains, the Sierra Nevadas the Sierras were getting pounded with snow. We had the opposite weather the last couple of days. It's been like not warm, but just at least not snowing and brick cold. So yeah. Yeah, I don't need that there. Do you guys want to before I close it out? Should we watch the clip of the GSX again, or are we done seeing it for the day? And don't forget, I'm still doing the 1500th subscriber giveaway. I think I got within 26 today, and so I'm excited to give that away. I think this Wednesday I'm going to be live with my buddy JD doing our claim sale. So that'll be here on Wednesday for West Coast Wednesday Eve. Thank you, Avery. I've had a great time talking and engaging with everybody in here. It's been fun, and I like the idea of engaging with everybody in here, guys. Did we I think I had about 30 people at the peak today, and my goal is by the end of the year to have 75 to 100 people in for every SunDAVE Sitdown. So this has been great. Thank you for allowing me to build this community with the help of friends, with the help of foes, with the help of Coming Tim. San Francisco had over 5 inches of rain. Wow. Jesus Christ. Hopefully that dissipates because I'll be in the Bay Area this weekend. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you and everything that you asked me tonight. All right, we're going to close it out with the clip. We will show the damn clip. Yes, that is a great comic. City Inland. Yeah, no, yeah, you're in Rancho Cucamonga. All right, foes, show yourself. All right, well, thank you. Happy New Year to everybody. I forgot it's January 1st. Time's a social construct, and it's a flat circle. Russ Cole was right. All right, let's show it off. I'm going to close it out with the clip again, and then everybody have a great week. Maybe I'll see some of you on Wednesday, and I might not be live next Sunday, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, Happy New Year, everybody. Have a great week, and keep digging. Size Defenders #1. All right, we're getting close to that GSX if it's in here. Star Slayer #1 or 7. Man Bat. Holy shit! Holy fucking shit! Ah! 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 Oh my god! Oh! Oh! I did not know it was going to happen. Oh my god. God. West Coast Avengers.